Eddie and Company.
I'm going to be keeping you company for the next few hours.
You are not going to believe the company.
This company.
You're going to bankrupt your mama's company?
At least I have the radio to keep me company.
On 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
I will readily admit to you, Eddie Garrison, and to the listeners of this fine program, that, and it's a fascinating thing that happens, and maybe I'm alone in this. It wouldn't be the first time that I have some sort of a thought that is isolated to me, and I just assume that everybody else thinks the same way I do, and then I go, you know what, I don't know, maybe something's weird about my brain. But it's a Tuesday that kind of feels like a Monday. Now, for you, maybe not, Eddie, because you had to produce the Pacers game, but your timeline still had to be thrown off.
It is. I asked you yesterday if it was Monday because I couldn't remember what day it was.
It's just so bizarre, right? Because yesterday we had the Pacer game that got underway at 1:30, pregame at 1 o'clock. So we did literally a 1-hour show yesterday. So I came in, did the show, and then, you know, it's kind of like, oh, awesome. Got the day off and I do a bunch of stuff. Well, everything's closed. So you just kind of go back into your hibernation. And I still don't know, and we can talk a little bit about the Pacer game, but there's obviously a bigger game to talk about tonight. But did we ever get clarification, Eddie? I mean, it's a moot point. Did we ever get clarification as to the exact reason they moved the game time?
Weather in Atlanta last night was not good, apparently.
So they were
conducive for flying.
So they were anticipating that there was going to be bad weather if they had played late.
Yes.
Okay, that's kind of what I assumed was going to be the case. But either way, before we get into Indiana, Purdue, and there's NFL news as well, I'm going to be right now alone on an island. It's me and Wilson the volleyball in this particular thought, it would seem. But I said this yesterday, but I would assume that yesterday we probably didn't have as many listeners because most people were working from home or were not out and about driving. And I think a lot of our listeners are people that are driving in a car. I know I'm alone on this island. But Indianapolis is a fairly large metropolitan area. It's a city of within the Unigov, it is what? Somewhere around probably 840,000 people, but from a square mileage area, in terms of the area that is known as Indianapolis or Marion County, pretty big area. We had 48 hours ago, a foot of snow dropped on this town within the span of basically 24 hours. A foot of snow. Heavy snow. Not drifting lights, heavy snow. And yet, I'm looking out right now at 10th Street and Meridian, and cars are moving along at, yeah, of course you're not doing 45 miles an hour. But I know that it's the low-hanging fruit and the easy narrative to sit there and complain that, like, side roads haven't been hit, or what are we doing? I can't believe that I still can't get out of my driveway. This happened 48 hours ago. If you expected and anticipated that the entire city was supposed to be cleared a day later, what the hell were you doing going and buying $150 worth of milk and eggs the day before at Kroger?
Doesn't make sense to me. Like, why? It's not going to last forever. It's
Correct.
not the end of time.
But the biggest thing that I am saying is this, Eddie.
And then you're going to have to throw out all these milk, bread, whatever, because you've got an overabundance, and
Right.
you realize, oh, I didn't need all that.
So everybody anticipates like you're going to be homebound for a week, and then if you're not able to get out of your driveway 12 hours later, you're posting about how inept the road clearance was. Which is it? The bottom line is this. Yes, of course, I understand that not every side road has been touched. Yes, I understand that every subdivision street has not been touched. I get it. This happened a day ago. We had a foot of heavy snow that fell on this town in the blink of an eye, and a day later, people are out and about and going to the grocery store and doing whatever else. To me, it's commendable. It's commendable. I was on yesterday. In the last couple of days, I've been on Meridian, Pendleton Pike, Pennsylvania, Illinois, and they're, for the most part, clear. I mean, yeah, it's like icy, and I get it. You got to be safe and careful, don't get me wrong. But the fact that we're not on complete shutdown, I will be the one lone wolf here to say, if you truly step back and look at it in totality, then I think it's a job pretty well done. Because literally a foot of snow fell 36 hours ago. But whenever you think about cold temperatures in Indiana, whenever you think about snowbanks, everything that comes with it, you think about, what did we used to say? As the air gets colder, the gyms get hotter in the state of Indiana. We shift now from, yes, I know it's Super Bowl getting set for the matchup of the Patriots and the Seahawks. I get it. What could the Colts do differently? What do the Colts need to do to become one of those teams? I get it. But basketball in this state, you kind of shift from, especially once the Super Bowl's over with, you then kind of shift your mind into the basketball season. And it's a big one tonight. It's a big one at Assembly Hall. I am curious to know what the crowd will be there, because Bloomington got, 15 inches of snow? And that town, I'm sure, is not totally equipped for clearing all that out. But Purdue going down there and, in the case of Purdue, I mean, to say that they are backpedaling is an extreme. They are a veteran team. They are a senior-laden team. They've been through the battles. They're battle-tested. But they're going to have to show some resolve here. And there's one area that it appears as though they have shown, I don't believe it to be an epidemic for them, but a vulnerability that they need to get sorted out. By the way, would it look weird if I did the show with sunglasses on?
I think it would, because you're inside.
But I understand that. But let me explain. And it's not because my future's so bright I got to wear shades.
Okay.
Okay? $10 But I have now one of the things about me that's a unique characteristic, Eddie.
Unique?
Mm-hmm. I have very pretty blue eyes. You've probably never noticed this, but I have very blue eyes. I get a lot of compliments on my eyes. Okay?
Do you really?
Mm-hmm, I do. More so when I was younger than now. I think they're less blue than they used to be. But there's some sort of, and you can look this up. I'm not making this up. When I worked in television and they would do what's called Frezzi lights, and I would have to do like a stand-up under the lights, I would literally have to close my eyes and open my eyes, and I'm like, okay, I have 30 seconds to get this done, or before my eyes would like freak out. And my eyes are unbelievably sensitive to light. Odd as that may be. And it has something to do with, if you look up light sensitivity in eyes, I think it would tell you that blue eyes, there's something about the color blue in eyes that you don't have like some sort of the green chloroform or something that like protects your eyes. I have no idea. But my eyes are super sensitive to light. It just so happens in the window set that we have here in this studio, which is a beautiful new studio up here in our new building, but the snowbank from them clearing the lot is in the light right at the line of latitude of my eye, and the light is reflecting right off of it, right into my eye, and it's super sensitive.
You know, I have another solution for you.
Okay.
There are blinds.
They're down.
I can't see because of the board, but it looked like it was up.
Well, it could go down a little bit more, but hold on. It's much better. How do I look?
Like a douche?
Maybe so, but I'm just telling you. But tonight, Indiana, Purdue. Okay, now, neither one of these two teams coming into it needs sunglasses because right now things are so bright, right? For Purdue, yes, because I'm a big believer in Matt Painter and that group. And I do believe that Braden Smith's the best player in the country. And I like Trey Kaufman-Wren. And I like the things that they've been able to do. But there's one area of susceptibility for Purdue, and I don't think that it is long-term season plague susceptibility. But there's one area of susceptibility for Purdue that Indiana may be able to take advantage of. And we'll get into that over the course of the show today. Also, one of my favorite things to do when Indiana-Purdue play, 9 o'clock tonight at Assembly Hall. One of my favorite things to do, which, by the way, Eddie, let me ask you this. If you were given tickets to the game tonight, would you go?
Absolutely. I would go.
Here's the only problem. For a lot of people, I'm not saying for you or me, but for a lot of people, if that game is at a 9 o'clock tip at Assembly Hall, what time do you think it'll end?
11:30.
Okay.
That's if it starts on time.
11:30.
Yep.
By the time you walk out, and you're going to be walking on ice and snow to get out to your car in the parking lot, and then by the time you get out of the parking lot and you are in the open getting onto I-69, what time is it going to be?
Midnight.
Okay.
Yeah, that game's for sure not starting at 9 o'clock tonight because the game before is one of the best games that we've had in the college football, or not college football, but college basketball season so far. Michigan, Nebraska, 7 o'clock.
It's a big one.
In the big house.
Well, not in the big house, but in the arena next to the big house, right?
Yeah.
So if you're getting in your car by midnight,
the big arena,
you're probably going to be driving back up. I'm going to assume that I-69 is not completely cleared, so you're going to be going 45 miles. So it'll take you, if you live on the north side of Indy, hour and a half to get back.
And it may be a degree outside.
1:30 a.m. I could say, honestly, I could see a lot of people like, yeah, I'm good. And people will kill me for saying that because, like, Jake, it's IU Purdue. I get it. I totally get it. I remember when Indiana and Purdue played. Can you look this up for me, Eddie?
Yes.
Here's one of my memories. There are so many great memories over the years of Indiana-Purdue. I remember, Purdue in 87 when Indiana went in and was, Indiana that year had 4 losses. They were 30-4. They lost to Vanderbilt. They lost at Illinois. They lost at Iowa. And they lost to Purdue. Great matchups. I remember, the triplets. I mean, that group for Purdue with Everett Stevens and Todd Mitchell and Troy Lewis, that was a special group Purdue had. They were really good. But I remember, those battles and those teams were so good. The number of times that Chad Austin hit game-winning three-point shots, or Jerron Cornell, who was a really smooth left-handed player, against Indiana, making big plays at Assembly Hall. The Calbert Cheney's group going into Mackey Arena and drubbing Purdue, or Tom Crean going in and beating Purdue soundly, but then also Purdue beating Indiana so soundly once Matt Painter had it going. There have been great moments in this rivalry. The NIT goes without saying, right? But there have been great rivalries in the history, or games in the history of this rivalry. But one of them jumps out to me, and it's somewhat applicable tonight. When I was in college, the Glenn Robinson and Alan Henderson battles and Calbert Cheney in that group. So I'm going to say it would have been in 94 when Glenn Robinson was just absolutely dominating the Big Ten. One of the most dominant seasons I've ever seen in college basketball. Indiana played Purdue in Mackey. And it was one of 2 days in the history of Indiana University that classes were ever canceled due to weather. It had to have been, if you look up, now can you look up for me, Eddie, the date of the night? I think it was 94. Somebody help me out here if you remember this.
94?
Yes, the 1993-1994 season, the game Purdue and Indiana in Mackey. So whatever that would have been. We're going to look up what the temperature was that day.
January 18th, 1994. It was
January
83-76 overtime.
Correct.
Loss for IU.
Henderson had a shot at regulation to either win it, I think, and missed over Robinson and went to overtime. Okay, I'm pretty sure it was that game. What was the date on that again?
January 18th, 1994.
Can we look up what the temperature was in either West Lafayette or Indianapolis on that day? I'm certain that my memory is correct on this. I may be totally off, but I'm fairly certain that I'm correct.
Yeah, Glenn Robinson had 33 and 12. Alan Henderson had 33. in the second half and overtime.
All right. That was the time that my apartment in Bloomington, I opened up in the bottom drawer of my dresser, which was up against like the sliding glass window of the bedroom that I had, and my jeans were like frozen inside the drawer up against the window because it was that cold outside. And the rumor always was that Indiana closed that day because I think Thomas Ehrlich was the president, was at a stoplight and his car died because his car was so cold, and so he called and said cancel classes. But we'll look up what the temperature was at that time. I'm going to say 20 below with wind chill. I'm not kidding. But either way, one of my favorite things to do over the years is to ask people.
It reached minus 24 wind chill.
Okay, see, listen. Do you
27?
Let me ask you something, Eddie. Do you ever think to yourself that how fortunate you are to have access to this sort of the encyclopedic mind?
No.
You never think that?
No.
Are you ever even half impressed of like how in the world did he remember that?
No.
I was off by 4 degrees. 4 degrees. One of my favorite things to ask about Indiana and Purdue when they play each other. It's been a while since I've done this on the X Post Twitter, but I used to do it almost annually. Tell me the player, and people can send a text to either 317-239-1070, or they can send a text to 317-523-9288. But send me a text and tell me this. If you are an Indiana or a Purdue fan, tell me the player of the other school. It is a bitter, hated rivalry, right? Indiana University, of the 11 schools that have won a national championship in both football and basketball, Indiana is the only whose chief rival has not won. Let me rephrase that. Of the 11 schools to have won a college football national championship and an NCAA tournament in men's basketball, Indiana is the only school of the 11 whose chief rival has not won either. And that's almost unfair because Purdue has been a better program athletically than, say, Cal, that fits into that trivia question. Or even Florida State, even though Florida State's great in football, that fits into that category of trivia question. But it's been a great rivalry. And I can only imagine for Purdue fans, I'm not trying to pour any salt into the wound. I got enough of it caked on the bottom of my boots right now. I can only imagine for Purdue fans what it must feel like to think, after years of hearing about the dust accumulating inside the five banners, and hearing all the time about Indiana with their banners, and Purdue is knocking on the door of getting one in basketball. And just when they think we're about to finally win a championship in this state and silence the Indiana fans that brag about their banners, and to turn around and have the Indiana football program win one before the basketball team got it done, has to be salt in the wounds. And I love Purdue. I do. I got a ton of respect for Purdue, and I feel for them in that area, in that regard. And I've actually got like 50-50 rooting interest amongst both teams. I got a win-win tonight because I'm cool with whichever team wins because I've got a great respect for both of them. But having said all of that with the bitterness of this rivalry, I'm always curious to know, whichever school you root for, tell me the player from the other school that deep down you have to admit you always kind of liked. The most common answer amongst Purdue fans is typically Purdue fans, if you put truth serum in them. There are 3 answers that are the most common. Eddie, would you like to guess the 3? The 3 Indiana players, historically speaking, that more often than not, when I have done this in the past, when I've asked Purdue fans, diehard Purdue fans, tell me the 3 Indiana players that deep down you have to admit you always kind of liked. What 3 do you think are the most common answers?
Are any of them within the last 10 to 15 years?
No.
Okay.
But you are aware of all 3. One is
Isaiah Thomas?
no, good guess, but he was only there 2 years, keep in mind. One is, well, two were in college when I was, and one is right before me.
Is Calbert Chaney one of them?
Yes. Yes.
Alan Henderson another?
No, because I think Henderson, because of the high school rivalry with Glenn Robinson, was automatically disliked.
What year were you there the first time?
Good point. So I'm going by the years of which I was a student, because one of these guys, well, Chaney left before I actually arrived in Bloomington. But I was there from 90 the fall of 93 until 96. And one of them is arguably the most famous high school basketball player in Indiana history.
Damon Bailey?
Correct. Which surprised me. You think a lot of Purdue people would have been fatigued by Damon Bailey, but he is one that a lot of Purdue people are like, you know what? I got to admit, I always kind of like Damon Bailey. And the third one's Alford. Now, from the Purdue side, do you want to guess the Purdue players that more often than not are mentioned by IU fans of like, you know what? I have to admit, I kind of like the guy.
Justin and Fisher's got two of the three. He texted in and said Calbert Chaney, Damon Bailey, and Tom Coverdale.
Yeah, Coverdale's another one. Yep. Coverdale's another one because he's got kind of a Purdue-type tenacity about him, right? So who are the three Purdue players that Indiana fans most commonly will admit deep down, it's like, yeah, I got to admit, I kind of liked him.
Not to sidetrack you again, but we also did have someone text in that said currently on 69, this is about 15 minutes ago, going north from Bloomington right now. They have done an excellent job clearing both north and southbound, all three lanes. And when it's two lanes, those as well. Kudos to the road crews. People shouldn't really have any trouble on 69 tonight getting to Bloomington.
Okay, that's good. I mean, that's good to know because it is going to be a late night.
Now, the three players that IU fans about Purdue?
Yes.
Are any of them recent? Or all?
Do you happen to have the breaking news sounder? This just in from my childhood friend, lifelong friend, Eric Barrett, who is an ophthalmologist. So this guy's an expert on eyes. This guy knows more about eyes than anybody. Jake, you are correct. People with blue eyes have less pigment in their iris. Thus, more light penetrates the eye, and they're more sensitive to light. I have the same problem. Thank you. Eric Barrett is giving me permission to put my sunglasses back on. I'm not an idiot. I'm telling you, I don't know. Listen, I don't know blank from Shinola. Other than I might buy another watch, and my next one might be a Shinola out of Detroit because they're fabulous. I think they're good-looking watches. I don't know much about anything. I can't tell you about, there is not a single subject on planet Earth that I can talk for 1,000 minutes about. But there are 500 subjects which I can talk about for 2 minutes. And eye pigmentation, 2 minutes. I can give you 2 minutes of it, and right there, 2 minutes of expertise on eye pigmentation. I knew I wasn't making that up, and I knew I was correct, and I have permission to wear the sunglasses. Now, Purdue players that Indiana fans always admit that they kind of like. You ready, Eddie?
Any of them recent?
Yes.
How recent we talking? Like Zach Edey recent?
Just before.
Robbie Hummel?
That's one. That is one for sure.
He's on the call tonight with John Fanta on Peacock.
That is absolutely one of them. Robbie Hummel would be one.
Carson Edwards?
Carson Edwards would be one.
That Chris chimed in on the text line with that as well.
Yeah, there's no way you couldn't like Carson Edwards. I mean, that guy, the lightning in a bottle aspect of Carson Edwards was intoxicating to watch. It was awesome.
Yeah. What about Glenn Robinson?
Glenn Robinson would be one, except for, and this is what's funny about Glenn Robinson. I think that there was always an elitism about Indiana basketball fans. Indiana basketball fans always had a holier than thou nature about them of, well, there are players that Coach Knight never would have taken because he wanted kids that went to class and were, helping old ladies across the street. And the perception amongst Indiana fans was that Bob Knight would not have taken Glenn Robinson. Bob Knight absolutely would have walked to Gary to pick up Glenn Robinson and piggyback him back to Bloomington.
Chris Kramer?
Chris Kramer's a polarizing one. He and Brian Cardinal both are players that Indiana fans, I think, had a great respect for, but deep down didn't like at all because of how hard they played and just how annoying they were.
What about Matt
players.
Painter, the coach?
Yeah, as a coach, I think Indiana fans really like him. As a player, he was just kind of a complimentary piece. Hummel would be one. Carson Edwards would be one. I think deep down, Indiana fans had a huge respect for the bigs, the Craig Rileys, the Brad Millers, the Jim Rowinskis, the Steven Schefflers. But the other player that I think a lot of Indiana fans really liked, and he's my favorite Boiler of all time. I've never met him. I've never talked to him. But he's my favorite Purdue player of all time, and I thought was a fabulous player and seemingly a really good guy and just a very understated player in college basketball, and that's Troy Lewis. I think a lot of Indiana fans deep down are like, yeah, Troy Lewis was pretty cool. Great high school player, great college player, on great teams, great competitor, and just seemingly a good dude. And I always kind of liked him. Yes, Eddie.
So, of course, right before the show started, it was announced that Joe Brady is being promoted as the Bills' offensive coordinator to the Bills' head coach, former offensive coordinator with the Buffalo Bills and former head coach with the New York Giants. Brian Daboll is in the AFC South. He is now the offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans. And then Sergeant John Perrine from the Indiana State Police saying that I-70 westbound is now open on the east side of Indianapolis. It was closed due to icy conditions. They are now opening it. So there's some local news.
I-70 westbound is now open.
Yes.
Okay. So too is our guest line because we're going to take it up 65 north. Is that correct, Sam King, next?
That's right, except I don't know if we're going up north because he's in Bloomington, right?
Oh, yeah, he might be driving. He'd be 65 southbound,
If he was smart, he probably would have stayed there last night.
Correct. Sam King, Lafayette Journal and Courier, will join us talking Purdue and Indiana and the one area where Purdue may be a little bit susceptible that Indiana could take advantage of. We'll get into that next. Hey there, Jake Query for Surfside. Look for the can with the sunset stripes. Love Surfside. So smooth with just that little splash of vodka. We're talking about lemonade and vodka or iced tea and vodka and a number of flavors. The raspberry is fantastic. Straight iced tea with a little splash of lemonade, the best. And then, of course, lemonade goes without saying. Surfside is just 100 calories, 2 grams of sugar, and with no carbonation, it is oh so smooth to enjoy. And for tonight, perfect to enjoy because they are officially partnered with Purdue Athletics, but gladly will help you cheer for Indiana if you're doing that as well. Surfside, look for it wherever you buy your favorite adult beverages. Please be 21 and please drink responsibly.
and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Okay, as we navigate through some of the roads and the reports from folks, I'm looking out right now, by the way, at the 70-65 split, and it looks pretty open. But our friend Kansas City Steve says 465 west to 65 south is closed due to ice. 70 westbound just reopened after icy conditions. And 69 down to Bloomington apparently at this point looks pretty good. But it's going to be busy tonight because it is Purdue and Indiana Assembly Hall down in Bloomington. Joining us now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Java House with multiple brick and mortar coffee house locations, including in Lafayette. But if you want that coffee taste, the amazingly smooth Colombian, or if you want the Wrangler Energy, Liquid Science Hydration for after your workouts, you can always get the Fan Bundle. Literally, you just enter The Fan on the search bar at javahouse.com. You can also use the code JAKE25 for 25% off your Peel and Pour pods. Instant, put it right there in 8 ounces of water, and there is your beverage. Sam King joins us now from the Lafayette Journal and Courier to talk about this. Sam, I'm going to get right to this point, and I want you to tell me if I'm overselling it or if I'm on to something, okay? I'm looking at Purdue's 3 losses. And in those 3 games, they allowed 81 attempts at three-point shooting, and the teams that beat them, UCLA, Iowa State, obviously, and Illinois, 38 of 81 in that area. Indiana has shooters in Lamar Wilkerson and as well Tucker DeVries. DeVries has not really gotten going of late. He's been in kind of a mini slump, but they are rhythm shooters, and they can be high-volume shooters from the three-point line. And if Purdue is susceptible to giving open looks, that can crack open the door for Indiana and an area that the Hoosiers can take advantage. Now, am I hallucinating here, or am I onto something that could be an area Indiana tries to take advantage of?
No, I think you're spot on. What Indiana does well offensively is kind of Purdue's weak point from a defensive standpoint. Purdue plays a lot of help defense. A lot of what Illinois did was get switches and convenient matchups and took advantage of it and just had shooters all over the floor. And you mentioned the 2 guys that IU has who are high-volume shooters who, if they hit 1 or 2 in a row, watch out because we know both of them can get hot. And we've seen Wilkerson, do something that nobody else in the Big Ten had done this year until coincidentally on Saturday against Purdue with what Wagler did against the Boilermakers, hitting 9 threes. So, it's definitely, if I'm Purdue, I'm concerned. The three-point defense hasn't been great this year, and obviously you're facing a team at home that shoots the 3 ball a lot, if not well, but at times extremely well.
When you talk about Purdue in that area, Sam, giving up open looks on the three-point circle, is it because of like a schematic breakdown, or is it a lack of athleticism in their key spots that teams have finally figured out?
I think that Purdue is an offensive team first and foremost, and last year wasn't that great defensively, a little bit better this year, but its best offensive lineup is having 2 big guys on the floor, and Oscar Clough and Trey Kaufman-Renn or Daniel Jacobson, however they tend to do that. But the thing is, all 3 of those guys defensively are probably centers. When you're playing offense, obviously one of them is playing the 4, one's playing the 5. So that is where Illinois got some favorable matchups the other day, getting Oscar Clough matched up on Keaton Wagler. I do think Wagler just hit some out-of-this-world shots, and maybe that's more on the offense being better than the defense in that regard. But I think Purdue's going to think offensively first and foremost and then do what it can defensively. Illinois just had 5 shooters on the floor at a time, so you couldn't really leave guys, and that allowed the Illini to get a lot of open shots, and then you had a guy going next level for 46 points.
Sam, you've been around this group a lot, and Purdue is a veteran team. Even their newcomers on the roster are veterans to college basketball. But, I think the world of Braden Smith, I think he's just a natural leader. Fletcher Lawyer's been around a long time. Trey Kaufman-Renn, I think, has been completely unselfish his entire career. But when you lose back-to-back games, and this is not a group that, as of late, is used to having that sort of an adversity, How, if in any way, have you noticed any sort of an emotional change in them, say now versus, a month ago when things were rolling?
I think kind of what you said, this is a veteran team, and over the last 3 years, it's a lot different when these seniors were freshmen. It felt like the world was ending when they would lose a game, and there was kind of some overreactions, and then maybe that's just guys who weren't used to losing coming from high school and AAU world. But over the years, they've really brushed off losses as well as you could hope. I think back to 3 years ago, I think it was, at Northwestern, and Purdue was number one, got beat by Northwestern, and the guys were like, okay, well, you know what? You lose games over the course of the Big Ten. It's just what happens. What happened after UCLA was Braden Smith said you can't let one loss become two losses and let two losses become three losses, and that's kind of where they're at now. Purdue very much still is in the thick of the Big Ten with who Nebraska has left to play, the fact that Michigan and Michigan State play twice still. Purdue goes to Nebraska, still plays Michigan State and Michigan, so there's a lot of things up in the air, but I think Purdue can't afford to lose any of these next three games against Indiana, Oregon, and Maryland if it wants to win the Big Ten, because those are good to haves and, teams that aren't competing for a conference title. So it does kind of put the pressure on these next three games that I think Purdue has to bounce back with three straight wins.
Sam, my last name is Query, okay? Now, you're a master of the pen, so you would know that query, by definition, means question, right? So one would assume that naturally, if there's anything of which I could be a master, it's the question. But yet, I oftentimes find myself in an interview saying to myself, this is a really dumb question, okay? And I'm bracing you and our audience for the fact, what I'm about to ask you may potentially be the dumbest of questions that you're going to hear in a long time, okay? From a fan standpoint, I understand the heated hatred between Indiana and Purdue. I totally get it. From a player's standpoint, do you think that and maybe it's not as true for Purdue because Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith, Trey Coffman-Wren, they grew up in Indiana, so they probably have tons of high school friends, whatever else, that go to IU. But is there the potential between rosters that the rivalry softens a bit because of the fact that they are not as familiar with the players on, say, the Indiana roster, because Indiana really only has one contributing player that's an Indiana high school player? And a lot of these are players that we are unfamiliar with before they arrived in Bloomington. And so as a result of that, at least maybe temporarily, that can warm up a little bit what was always an icy rivalry between the two, or vice versa. Does that make sense, what I'm saying, or is that the dumbest question you've ever had?
Not a dumb question, and just to your point, I said asked a question of Jakari Harris recently and prefaced it saying, this is probably a dumb question, but. So you have to look there.
That's right. We know when we're asking a dumb question, yes.
But I kind of said this on a podcast yesterday. You're of similar age to me, and I grew up when Bob Knight had been at Indiana forever and Gene Cady had been at Purdue forever. Purdue still has that tie to the Cady era with only one coach since then, and it's a guy who played for him. Indiana's had a lot of coaching turnover in that time, has done a lot of different paths in terms of recruiting rosters. The current one, basically all transfer portal guys. So I do think that the rivalry has lost a little bit in that regard. It used to be a heavy Indiana high school rosters for both schools, so the guys knew each other and had rivalries dating back to 9th grade, 10th grade probably. And now you get a lot of guys who, they know each other from maybe camps and stuff they've gone to for, a week or a few days, but these aren't guys who have been lifelong rivals or anything like that in a lot of cases. So I do think that it's lost a little bit in terms of the rivalry. The fans, specifically the older fans, I think it means more to them. But I would say even like younger fans, it's probably not as heated as it used to be. Growing up, it's all I heard growing up in Frankfort, Indiana, which is 30, 40 minutes from Purdue's campus. And obviously a lot of Indiana influence just being in the state. That's all you would hear on the playground and things like that is arguments over Purdue basketball or IU basketball. And I don't know that those things exist as much anymore.
Sam King, my guest, Java House Peel and Port guest line. He's with the Lafayette Journal and Courier. Indiana and Purdue, 9 o'clock tonight down in Assembly Hall. Sam, here's a weird one for you. When did Purdue travel down to Bloomington?
They went yesterday, so they're there now. I already saw it was when you called, watching an Instagram video of the team walking into Assembly Hall and looking up at the banners and coming down on the court. So I think the idea was to get ahead of the weather. We had practice availability moved up yesterday an hour, which threw us all for a loop because it happened kind of last minute. But the idea was that Purdue could get out of town quicker.
Okay. And yeah, I guess yesterday it would have been fewer people on the road, so it would have given them opportunity to do that. This game, in terms of, if you look at what happened against Illinois, and an unbelievable performance, individually speaking, certainly for the Illini and Mackey, but is there something that you are curious to see in the first several minutes of the game that you are wondering how Purdue reacts, or, that you're saying to yourself, if I see this early, then I know that Purdue is still in a rut? What would it be?
It would be if Fletcher Lawyer comes out and misses a couple of early shots. Unfortunately for him and for Purdue right now, he's struggling, and is a guy that if he's not hitting shots, he's kind of a liability, at least defensively for you out there. He's basketball smart, but his strength is really scoring and shooting the basketball. And other than going 4 of 8 against Penn State, I think he's 3 of 15 since then, and he went 0 of 4 from 3 the game before that. So you add all that up, and 3 for 19, 7 for like 25 over that stretch. Not great for a guy who's probably going to go down as the most prolific three-point shooter in your program's history.
Does Purdue have advantage both in size and perhaps even in athleticism on the blocks down low versus Indiana?
I would say absolutely, and I think Purdue actually played better when Daniel Jacobson was in the game against Illinois, but he only played 10 minutes, and I understand why. Purdue struggled to rebound, and Oscar Clough is your best rebounder. So Trey Coffman-Wren is, there's a reason he was a top 50 recruit coming out of high school, and a guy who was coveted by Indiana before choosing Purdue. So I think that Purdue has a strength on the blocks. I think Purdue probably has a strength overall, but the great equalizer is three-point shooting, and that's something you have to worry about when you face Indiana.
Lastly, Braden Smith, injury, tweaked the ankle. Any update?
He's going to tell us he's fine. I don't know how. This might be something where he and Trey Coffman-Wren both, when we get to the end of the season, we learn they're maybe a little bit more beat up than they've let on, but it seems like those guys are hobbling quite a bit these days, and that's a concerning sign. But Braden Smith came back and scored 17 points, I think, in the last 15 minutes after that ankle injury the other day. So I would say, at least basketball-wise, he's probably fine for right now.
Sam King, Lafayette Journal and Courier, coverage for Purdue. A pleasure as always, Sam, and safe travels back when you're coming back from Bloomington, because it's going to be late and I think it's going to be icy, but certainly appreciate the time as always.
Always a pleasure being on. Thanks very much.
Appreciate it. Sam King joining us on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. We come back. There was something that took place in the news, and it made me go, And I'm not going to say I told you so, but I'm going to say I told you so. Preemptively, next.
Chris Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Yesterday, by the way, Scott Agnes coming up top of the hour. Pacers in action yesterday, losing in Atlanta. One of the stories that came out, of course, we were in an abbreviated show yesterday. None of this is a done deal. But eventually, one would assume it would seem almost inevitable just based on rotation. But there was a report yesterday that Indianapolis could, in fact, be mentioned or discussed as a home city to the National Football League draft. Of course, the scouting combine extended for another 2 years here. But let me tell you something, and again, that I looked at and raised an eyebrow. And I want to preface with this. Of course, I understand that it would be fantastic for the city of Indianapolis to host an event like the NFL Draft. Of course. I'm not here to poo-poo that at all. There is no one that is a bigger, I mean, there are certainly equivalent.
There's going to be 1 million people here, Jake, when it's here.
Which leads me to this, Eddie. That's my point. Yes, of course, it's incredible, promotion, advertising for the city of Indianapolis. And the NFL Draft is a huge event. I don't personally understand standing out and drinking and hanging out in order to be able to hear the announcement of a name of a player you're probably not overly familiar with for your team and waiting 2 hours for that to happen, but to each their own. People enjoy it, that's cool. And if they want to have it in Indianapolis, hallelujah, have it every year here. Love it. But my contention has always simply been this, and my doubt has always been this. The NFL is undoubtedly the 800-pound gorilla in the American culture. You know, back when there was the conversation and yes, I understand it, there were political things that took place with athletes in the NFL. But the people that were like, that's it, I'm boycotting the NFL. The NFL's dying. No, you're not. No, you're not. People this year, the Super Bowl halftime show, they're going to boycott the Super Bowl because they don't like the halftime show. No, you're not. It's still going to do like 56 million viewers or whatever the number is. It's astronomical. That's why I've never understood the NFL's insistence on embellishing their numbers. You're the 800-pound gorilla. You don't need to pretend to be the 900-pound one. And when the NFL Draft was in Nashville, Tennessee, and they made the claim that 1 million people were there. 1 million people were at the NFL Draft in Nashville. It's so insulting. And people buy it. People just think that's, no question. No question. In Detroit, 750,000. I remember the late Jim Irsay sending the post. 750,000 people right now are in Detroit for the opening round of the NFL Draft. No, they're not. No, they're not. Now, if that's true, and let's just say that the 750,000 is if they come back and say, no, we met over 3 days. Okay, fine. 250,000 per day. Okay? 250,000 per day. 300,000 at the opening round because you would think tapers off a little bit. So let's say 300 to 350,000 people for round one of the NFL Draft. That's the equivalent of an Indy 500. Okay. So, Eddie, let me ask you.
Yes.
What
Jake.
naturally would be the most convenient and immediately associated with Indianapolis venue by which to hold such an event?
The Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Okay. The three areas that were discussed and mentioned for Indianapolis if it were to host an NFL Draft. Military Park. Cool. Love Military Park. That's cool. White River State Park. That's cool. No question. Awesome, beautiful area. Or the south lot of Lucas Oil Stadium. Could it be that the NFL said, we don't want to have this at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway because that would actually support what Jake Query of Indianapolis Radio has said forever, which is it would immediately invalidate and put it right to public eye the immediate justification that this is true, that there are not 350,000 people there, because we know that is a venue that holds 258,853 people in permanent seating and can hold up to 350,000 if you include the infield. And so if you held the NFL draft there, and gasp, wait for it, you actually didn't have someone in every seat for a 2.5-mile oval plus every square inch of the infield, then you could no longer make the preposterous claim that you're the 900-pound gorilla and you're getting 250,000 people to the NFL draft. It is incredibly impressive to say that 80,000 people show up. And that's possible. That's plausible. I've been to Lambeau Field. I've been to Green Bay several times. And I saw the aerial shots of the draft in opening day, and it was the parking lot of Lambeau Field and like half of the football field. Okay, 75,000 people, certainly plausible. So why are you trying to tell me it's 10 times that amount?
Are we sure?
Indianapolis Motor Speedway would illuminate the lunacy of that number.
Are we sure the Indianapolis Motor Speedway said no as well?
No, I don't think the Indianapolis Motor Speedway has been broached on the subject.
Okay.
I don't know that. I realize that I do freelance work for them. I want to be very clear. I'm not speaking on any way, shape, or form as a representative of the Speedway. I'm sure the Speedway, if they wanted to rent out the facility, would be on par with that. Although it also maybe that wouldn't be feasible because it would be within a month of the 500, and they have to. I mean, I don't know. But all I'm saying is, I would imagine that the NFL, when the NFL says we have an event that we're going to bring 350,000 people to your city, and the city of Indianapolis says, perfect, we have a venue that can house exactly that. The NFL would go, no, we don't need, we're not expected to actually fill that, are we? We're just going to tell you it's 350,000. That's all. I've taken off my tinfoil hat long enough to put the phone up to my ear to call Scott Agnes next.
and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Pacers back in action tomorrow night at the Fieldhouse. I believe the Chicago Bulls, the opponent. Yesterday, a businessman special down in Atlanta. Hawks and Pacers, and the Pacers, another one of those games where came out, looked good, and then in the end gets away from them. Atlanta gets that win. But joining us now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. What's that?
Do you know what I thought of when I heard when you were just talking about that when I was watching that third quarter unfold? This is what I thought of yesterday.
Is that the sound? That's my sound effect of cars in the snow? Is that right?
Yeah, driving into the snowbank, yeah.
Okay. Right? You're a fan of my sound effects. Huh?
Yeah.
I'm like the fella from the, what was the, I can't believe I just spaced on the name of the movie. What was the spoof cop movie of the 80s? And the guy did all the sound effects.
Why are you asking me like I would know something from the 80s?
Police, somebody help me out here. I can't believe I just completely spaced. Don't get old. It's tough. And I didn't sleep well last night. But there was the one guy that does all the sound effects. That's kind of like me, right? I got them all.
Oh, you're thinking of the Police Academy.
Police Academy, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you knew it.
I know the guy you're talking about. I forget his name too.
Do we have Scott, did you say?
Yes.
Scott Agnes joins us. I'm sure thrilled to be doing so on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Scott, I'm going to begin with this. Before we get into the negatives, I'm going to go with a few positives about the Pacers. Not easy to do in this kind of a season, I realize. But I believe that this is a year, perhaps, that we could look back on in 2 years, and I'm saying next year is still going to be a reacclimation period and a wait and see on the burst of Tyrese Halliburton period and et cetera. But one of the areas that we may look back on and say was a positive this season is the rounding totality of growth of different levels of his game for Andrew Nembhard and becoming a guy that we know in the past could shoot and has a great mid-range game. But now I think even facilitator, court vision, all of those things had to improve this year, and so far I believe have. Am I being too rosy?
No, I entirely agree. I mean, he's had double-digit assists in 3 of the last 5 games, the last couple. He's gone back to more of what we saw a little bit in college before he got to the pros here, where he was more of having the ball handling responsibilities. And they actually planned for that a couple years ago, Jake, but he was so productive and so good that they couldn't take him out of the starting lineup. So they said, all right, you play the off-guard spot. And so that's when he really became the guy that could defend, knock down jumpers, and also ease a lot of the burden that Tyrese Halliburton had. But you're totally right. Yeah, he's become more well-rounded in what he can do. And I think, though, he'll look forward, though, to having less on his shoulders, because you can just see him and Pascal Siakam in particular are in overdrive every single game. The other thing that, if I'm looking at positives, and then we'll get into other areas, Scott, it's a very small sample size, and I've got to see it more consistently. And this has been the thing that has always kind of teased us about this player. But of late, it seems as though Jarris Walker is starting to kind of find a role and a confidence. Now, it's a little unfair because I think that we are expecting to see the kind of production that you would anticipate from a top 10 player, a top 10 pick. And by that, I mean a guy that becomes like a borderline franchise level player. Maybe the ceiling for Jarris Walker is simply being, a Derek McKee, Dwayne Farrell, David West type guy that's has a specific role on a very good team. But he has not found consistency until late. Is this now a turn of the corner for him, or is it going to be one step forward, half step back? I'm with you. I still want to see more. What he's done in the last couple of weeks, to me, has been really encouraging. Forget the points, because we knew he could score. His his rookie year, when he spent a lot of that time with the G League team, he was knocking down threes and really improved his shots. I was never worried about that. You gave the great analogy, I think it was, a couple weeks ago. There was a fog, right? And that feels like it has been lifted, that the confidence continues to be building. And what I like most is the traits that we kept being advertised and we saw on video in his time in Houston, to me, are finally coming to light a little bit more. I'm talking about using his length. I'm talking about getting those steals and getting out in transition, being a pest there defensively, blocking a couple shots, much like we've seen Johnny Furphy here in the last few months amp that up as well. The scoring is great. It's the defense and being confident in what he's supposed to be doing that has been most positive to me here recently.
Scott, let's say, okay, we're going to look into the future here. You ready? Get your DeLorean, get your 1.21 gigawatts. We're going to go like 20 months from now. Let's say that Tyrese Halliburton is playing and is at a healthy level, okay? So you know that at the top of the East, these three guys that were on the 2025-2026 roster are going to be very important rotational pieces.
I'll say Johnny Furphy,
okay,
TJ McConnell, and that's, you would hope, Walker. The challenge here, though, is we know they need to upgrade the center position, and so it's going to take ammo. It could be Mathurin, it could be Walker, it could be both of them to go get your center spot. I don't rule out that Mathurin isn't here, but it just makes so much sense in terms of what they need versus what they have for him to potentially not be included in that bunch. So I think there's two for sure, and then a lot more question marks after that.
Okay. One of the players that you didn't mention there, Isaiah Jackson, thoughts?
Still coming back from that injury, has not shown to be a starting caliber center. It's a lot to pay for a second or third string center at $7 million per year. I don't think you should lose hope in him. It's only year 5 and coming after a major injury. But is he a key piece, a guy they're going to have to depend on? I'm not there yet.
Okay. Jay Huff.
He's been solid. What's interesting, Jake, is he's been out of the rotation basically the last 2 games. He was set to not play for the first time this season, last game, until they kind of waved the white flag for the final 2 minutes. But I think that's been interesting. It's probably matchup dependent in this, and on top of that, they found success, especially in that first quarter with that smaller, with the centerless starting group. So I have no reason to believe they wouldn't continue that in the short term. But Jay Huff being a backup, that makes sense. He's a low-cost guy. So I would foresee him being here through his contract, which is at least 2 more years. But I don't think he may necessarily be, a key contributor like we were talking about, 18, 20 months from now.
Is Ben Shepherd another one that could be, say, a throw-in or a salary match type thing? Or do you believe that they look at Ben Shepherd and what he can do defensively and then spot shooting-wise? Have they seen enough, say, from a Talon Peter to say, okay, if we've got to move Ben Shepherd, we have that piece that is still there. Where do things stand with all of that?
Yeah, I think Ben Shepherd is exactly what you see him as, and he's a role player off the bench that can defend. His number one trait is a high motor, high energy guy that during the months kind of right now, the dog days getting to the All-Star break, that you really need him and TJ McConnell to help jumpstart you. In terms of his contract, it's very team-friendly. I don't think he's a guy you'd be looking or wanting to include. I don't think a guy like Talon Peter or Cam Jones are quite there yet. Rookies, young guys that haven't gotten all that much action, especially Cam Jones because of his preseason injury. So I think Ben Shepherd continues to be part of this bunch, and I think if you're at full health, I think he's kind of that fringe guy within the rotation. Depending on your matchup, he might be the 9th guy. Another game, he's the 11th guy.
Scott, one of the things, Scott Agnes is my guest, Fieldhouse Files, where you can read his work. He's on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. We have certainly, it feels as though it's a fait accompli. It feels as though the worst kept secret is that Ben Mathurin is the piece that the Pacers are going to dangle to try to get themselves a center. Now, whether or not Jay Huff, how he plays into the future, we'll see. Micah Potter, how he plays into the future, we'll see. But do you believe Is there any evidence from the Pacers themselves that Ben Mathurin is a trade piece? Or is this just we who cover the team and are around it making a conclusion based on what seems to be logical of rotation?
I wouldn't say there's any substantive evidence. Nothing like they've made clear he's not part of this group, or they're trying to showcase him to up his value. I don't think there's anything like that. To me, it comes down to the financial aspect more than anything, more than fit, more than usage rate, anything like that. Is the financial implications, and you have a big missing piece there at that center spot that has bothered this team all season long, healthy or not. And so I think when you factor in all of that and how much it might cost to re-sign him, because if you're Mathurin, this is your first big contract. Now you're a restricted free agent, and since the new collective bargaining agreement was ratified a couple of years ago, restricted free agencies really favored teams on that front. And so that's something to consider here. And you don't have to be under the luxury tax until the end of the season. So let's say the Pacers were over the luxury tax at this time next year. That's not super concerning for the limitations. But with that said, to your question, I think it's a combination of how they play with and without him, and also can you upgrade this team can you maximize the upgrades with this team, Jake, by moving on from a lottery pick like this? It's not something you do easily, but I think it's something you have to consider right now, given their other limitations.
Do you think they would consider trading the pick in the upcoming draft in 26?
It all depends, obviously, I think, Eddie, on what the return is, so I would never rule it out, but I would see that as highly unlikely. The reason where it would make sense, and this is why you should never just toss out that idea here, is the Pacers are in win-now mode. So, like we were talking about the center position a lot, right, Eddie? And with centers, Donnie Walsh taught me this years ago. You got to give centers like 3-4+ years to even know exactly what they are. That's why with Isaiah Jackson, I feel comfortable starting to form an opinion on that front. But the Pacers don't have 3 or 4 years. Siakam's in his best of his career. Halliburton's probably entering the prime of his career. And so with that said, it's got to be more of a ready-made player for this Pacer team. However, the thing going back to the financial situation is it's highly advantageous to have one of these star players on a rookie deal for the next 4+ years and have the team control there. And that's something that they would like to reset there.
Well, the reason why I asked that is because if they were, discussing that potentially with teams, if there's a player out there, you would have to assume that said player that they would acquire with utilizing the pick fits the timeline with Tyrese, and it's not, near somewhere between Tyrese and Pascal in terms of age, because you still have to find some pieces to build around Tyrese for the future.
Entirely, yeah, and they've really set their contracts up to be surrounding Tyrese. I think it's through the 27-28 season. But what we've seen work so well, like with Oklahoma City, is they have guys now starting to come off those rookie deals and get paid, while they're also resetting their clock. And because they have all these draft picks, is they have these other younger guys that are still in their first couple of years, so they are costing pennies on the dollar compared to what they are contributing out there. And this being such a good draft class, that I'd have a difficult time not making a pick and not utilizing it. But again, it all comes down to what the other side of the offer is.
By the way, you said that if it takes 3 to 4 years to assess, and we're just entering that window of assessment for Isaiah Jackson, your assessment would be what?
I would say a little bit disappointing from what you would have hoped. First-round pick, 20th. You would hope that's a solidified role player without question, not necessarily needing to be a starter. But that's kind of would be my hope for the position that the Pacers acquired at number 22. And right now it feels like he's kind of a fringe rotational guy. Certainly was coming back from an injury, had that setback with the concussion, which I'm sure you've discussed. He later explained was a lot more to it than we initially knew there. But I would expect to see more from him. And I think he can really unlock areas in which this team does not operate in previous iterations.
Okay, 2 other really important questions here for you, Scott. Scott Agnes, my guest, Fieldhouse Files, where you can read his work. I bought a pair. I've never done this before. I've never done this before. When I was in the 8th grade, Eastwood Middle School, as you know, Scott, Bruce Bowling's basketball team, that year, everybody bought Converse weapons. That was the big shoe, Converse weapons. I had a pair of New Balance, James Worthy New Balance high tops that I wore that season. Actually, I liked them. I've always kind of liked New Balance. My favorite pacer, I'm totally open about it, is Aaron Nesmith. I've always loved that kind of player, a guy that just doesn't need anything designed for him, just goes out and does whatever you need him to do. Love Aaron Nesmith. So I bought a pair of the Aaron Nesmith New Balance shoes. Never really bought a pair of shoes because of a player before, but I did it for Aaron Nesmith, right? I'm going to buy a pair of shoes, and I bought the New Balance shoes. Now, I love them. They're very comfortable. They've got great grip, which is awesome. But they are literally atrociously fluorescent yellow. I mean, like I could go out and stop traffic. Is there anywhere other than at a Pacer game where I can wear those shoes and not be the world's biggest D-bag?
I would say at the Lifetime basketball court, getting some run in there,
Okay.
doing a workout. I feel like a lot of people dress up for the gym, it seems like, and I think that would be an area. On the Monon, certainly, as you're getting your heart steps and walks in. Maybe,
Okay, not bad.
out there.
So,
and then maybe doing yard work if it's not too dirty, because you do not want to get those dirty.
Okay. So fashionably speaking, just putting those on with a pair of jeans, I'm looking too much like Zach Morris, correct?
Or Mark Boyle.
Or
I was going to
Boyle,
say,
yes.
we know Mark has that great yellow pair he always travels with.
I'm not wearing it with a 1980s San Francisco Seals Hawaiian shirt. So I guess there is that separates me from Mark Boyle, right?
What I would not do is wear it with a pair of jeans just to kind of go through the airport. Out at the track with maybe some shorts on a hot day, I could see that.
Okay. What about with jeans to a game?
Yeah, absolutely. And then wear a polo or a quarter zip to match.
Okay, so I
see nothing wrong with that.
Because I've already worn them once to a game and burnt 3 people's retinas, no question, and then 2 people thought I was Mark Boyle, which was unusual. Okay.
The other thing is you got the thematic thing there, right? Going to a game, it's fitting, so that makes perfect
of course,
sense.
Right? Okay. Other question. Actually, I bought a pair of Nikes also. That when I bought them, I got an email about these Nikes on sale, and I bought them because I thought they were blue and orange, and I thought, oh, well, I can wear those when I go to Clemson games. Mm-hmm. So I bought them, and they showed up, and they're actually the blue and gold Pacer that like the coaching staff wears. So I have like those, so I wear those to the games too. So I mean, I'm a dork like that. Okay. Other question is this, Scott. You went to Indiana. I assume you grew up an Indiana basketball fan, correct?
Absolutely, and
Okay.
football, to be clear.
So tell me this. Tell me the 2 to 3. This is our theme of the day. Give me the 2 to 3 Purdue players that even when little Scott Agnes was growing up and was the obnoxious Indiana fan as I was, that deep down you had to admit you could not dislike them even though they played for Purdue. You didn't want anybody to know it, but you kind of liked them either because they seemed like good dudes or you respected and enjoyed their game.
It's probably top of mind because he does every single broadcast, but Robbie Hummel's the first name that comes to mind there with all those. Outside of that, they went through that dark period in the 2010s or so or whatever where they had to reassess what they were. A throwback here, Glenn Robinson, but I didn't grow up with him, but I know he would have been. I know he would have been fun to watch throughout that. Outside of that, there's probably not many. I think more about the negative side of all that. The Brighton Cardinals, the Chris Kramers.
Yeah, Purdue had so many guys that just made your blood boil. And that's the ultimate Todd Foster, the ultimate sign of that is, the ultimate respect is the fact that you don't like him, right? Because deep down that means you're like, man, I wish I had that dude on my team, I mean, Will Sheehy was just, a complete goon in the eyes of Purdue fans. But Will Sheehy was also like the prototypical Purdue-type player. That's what makes rivalries great. All right, Scott, Pacers in action tomorrow night. Bulls, Fieldhouse Files. You'll have all the coverage. Appreciate the time as always.
You got it. Thanks, guys.
All right, Scott Agnes joining us on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. I know I've said this before, and I know I probably have bias with this, because he was the Mr. Basketball my senior year of high school. But I will absolutely go to my grave with this. there may still be others that match it. And I know there were others before it. But Glenn Robinson in 1994 had the most dominant college basketball season that I've ever seen. Now, maybe there's an age bias there. I know that Bill Bradley of Princeton had unbelievable numbers, and I think still has the record for most points cumulatively in a Final Four. I know that Glenn Rice in 1989 had the highest single NCAA tournament scoring streak in NCAA history. I know that Christian Laettner is probably the most accomplished player in the history of college basketball. 4 Final Fours, 2 national championships, and the most famous shot, arguably, in tournament history. I know that Pete Maravich was a scoring whiz, and his record will likely never be broken. I get it. I mean, but from a men's standpoint, Chris Jackson, later Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, Chris Jackson as a freshman at LSU out of Gulfport, Mississippi, was hitting everything and was an unbelievable player. Mark Macon as a freshman at Temple. It was unusual and historic to have a freshman come in and be the leading scorer on a team that was number 1 in the country. Unbelievable. There have been an unbelievable number of players that went through, and, Patrick Ewing in 85. There have been those, Carmelo Anthony as a freshman leading Syracuse. But when I say dominance, I don't even mean statistically speaking. But in terms of tone, in terms of aura, Glenn Robinson frightened people because he just had such a nastiness of being the big dog, get out of my way, including maybe even those on his team. Because that dude, I've always told the story of the first time that I ever heard of Glenn Robinson. When I had a buddy that was playing AAU basketball, and they played a team from Gary. And Glenn Robinson, he was dominant. They beat the Gary team. And then in typical AAU style, that means you can pick up players off of said team. The Bloomington AAU team acquired Robinson, and their coach drove from Bloomington to Gary twice a week to pick him up, to bring him to practice and drive him home. That's convenient. Only 6 hours out of the way round trip. But the first game that they played, according to my buddies that were there, I didn't witness this with my own 2 eyes, but why would they lie? And they told me this in the moment, not 30 years after the fact. Robinson goes out and absolutely dominates, gets done, takes his shoes off and starts rubbing his feet, and is like, yeah, my shoes are actually like a 10 and a half and I wear a 12 or a 13 or whatever. He was that unbelievable. And a lot of people didn't know of him until Gary Roosevelt made their way down and played against Brebeuf in the finals, and he was dominant. But his ability to pull up mid-range, finish with authority on a drive, hit a pull-up three, block a shot, but more so just absolutely intimidate everybody. There is nobody that had a more appropriate nickname than Big Dog, because literally he was the alpha from the time he walked on the floor. And I've never really understood. I think he was his size was kind of a tweener in terms of the NBA and going to Milwaukee right away, whatever else. But I really did think he was going to be a transcendent college player. But he is one that I think if you put truth serum in Indiana fans deep down, they all would be like, you know what? It was impossible for me to not enjoy watching Glenn Robinson play. He was that good and that dominant. Tonight, Indiana, Purdue. We'll get back into that, including we talked about from Purdue's standpoint, areas of susceptibility. What about that from Indiana? We will get into that. And did you say Holder is in or out, Eddie, at this point?
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock for Stephen Holder. We'll do that as well. Query Company here in the Fan.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Tyrese Halliburton offering a candid and recent update on his rehab and what he has learned from it. We will play that for you coming up about 15 minutes from right now. But tonight it's Indiana and Purdue, Assembly Hall, Simon Scott Assembly Hall down in Bloomington. Talk plenty about Purdue and what Purdue's area of susceptibility may be, and that is their struggles of late in guarding the three-point shot. You know, UCLA was 9 of 20 from three-point range in their win over Purdue, but outside of that, Illinois was 18 of 38, and Iowa State was 11 of 23. All told, 38 of 81 from three-point range in their three losses. That's giving up 47% from three-point range. Indiana has three-point shooters. You know, Lamar Wilkerson is a guy, Purdue fans can be familiar with this. I've said before, he reminds me a little of Carson Edwards. And the fact he is a volume shooter and a rhythm shooter. And when he starts to feel it, then it's like a rainstorm. Look out, here it comes. There's nothing you can do about it. It's a downpour. He can hit from anywhere. By the way, Eddie, Cluster Truck. Thanks again to Cluster Truck for lunch today.
Yes, big fan. Get
fabulous, right?
$5 off your order of 25 or more, yes.
How do you get the $5 off the order of 25 or more?
Use code BIGFAN.
Big fan.
Big fan.
And what did you get today?
I got the Caesar salad.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Are you on a diet? Usually you go with the Korean salmon, right?
The Korean barbecue salmon, the chicken tenders, the mac and cheese, barbecue pulled pork mac and cheese, yeah. I've worked other stuff in occasionally. I've had, I think, the Reuben, a couple other things, yeah, good stuff. Their pizza last week was really good, too.
Yeah, it looked good. I went with the cheese quesadilla that I always do because it's quick and it's easy. And
it's always funny.
Good.
Evan Sherrill will text me like, hey, what do you guys want today? I'm like, well, you don't need to ask about Jake.
I love it. I'm telling you, I'm a simplistic eater. But Cluster Truck, fantastic. I think for Indiana tonight, we talked about Purdue's susceptibility. Indiana's, I think, is the fact that they don't have the muscle to contend on the low block with Purdue's combo of Oscar Clough and as well Trey Kaufman-Renn. And I would anticipate that Braden Smith is going to be feeding a lot into the post to try to take advantage of that. And also, it just feels like Indiana in terms of their shooters. I mean, like I mentioned Lamar Wilkerson, but Tucker DeVries has really struggled. And if you can get physical with him and get him a little bit uncomfortable early, then I think that he, gets into a point where he can get kind of away from the rhythm of the offense because he starts to try to force things too much.
I also think, too, Jake, on the defensive side, if they do, Purdue go with the normal five, I'll be interested to see if they do change the starting lineup to match either Indiana just because they're not as big, and Indiana may try to get out and run a little bit more to get in advantageous situations offensively, so it forces Oscar Clough off the court, and they just go back to Trey Kaufman-Renn as the five. If they don't go small and they do pound Indiana inside, then Tucker DeVries has got to be able to hold his ground because there's been too many times this year where he gets into foul trouble.
Yes. And
he gets off the court, and then next thing you know, all the attention goes to Lamar Wilkerson, and the offense is just stale and dead.
Tucker DeVries, to me, he's a good player. He looks to me a little bit like a guy that was a Moval Player of the Year, partially because he's very talented and also because he's the coach's kid. And I know that that's not necessarily applicable at the D1 level, but we all knew that guy. We all had that player. Eddie, you played Little League Baseball. Did you play Little League Baseball anywhere, or were you always just like a travel baseball guy?
I did play Little League Baseball,
okay, yeah. What Little League did you play in?
The Decatur Central Little League.
Decatur Central Little League. Okay, and the Decatur Central Little League, are the teams named after major league teams?
Depends on the level. So, like your age group, basically. Like you had college, you had minor league baseball teams, you had major league baseball teams.
What's your favorite team that you were on?
The Charleston River Dogs.
The River Dogs?
The Charleston River Dogs.
Is that an actual name?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you guys have Charleston River Dog hats?
Yeah.
What exactly is a river dog?
It's a river dog.
Just a dog that lives down by the river?
Yeah.
Like in a van down by the river?
Yeah.
So when you were on the Charleston River Dogs, who was your dad your coach?
Yeah, he's one of them.
Okay, well, this might apply to you then. But every single team, every Little League team, I'm not saying any names. But when I was a kid, I played T-ball, obviously. But then in terms of Little League, I played for the Giants, I played for the Indians, and then 2 years on the Red Sox. Every Little League team has the kid that got to be a pitcher because their dad was the coach. Now, Brad Fields was a pitcher and a really good one.
Not applicable to me, Jake. I was the catcher.
Okay, but you probably had no names, but there was a kid, I guarantee you, or a kid that makes the all-star team because his dad's the coach, and everybody's like, that kid's not any good. Same kid shows up, and he's got half of Dick's Sporting Goods on. He's got the eye black on. He's got pine tar. He's got the Barry Bonds elbow protector. He's got all of it. He's got the big league chew. He's got the whole deal. And then he goes out there, and he's terrible. Now, that's not Tucker DeVries. That's not what I'm saying. But there is a little bit of that feel of, at times, you look at it and you go, man, when he was at Drake, for example, he must have absolutely been lined up because he's a good player. But it feels like he has the 90% athleticism that would allow you to be a really good Moval player, but that extra 10% brings you back down to earth a little bit within the Big Ten. But you look at it and you say, I'll bet a ton of shots were driven his way earlier in his career. And he's a 2,000-point scorer. But when you get him off kilter, and to use a Pat Riley term, if you can get into his airspace, you can get him uncomfortable, and he can, I'm not going to say derail, but he looks uncomfortable pretty quickly. And it's not easy to get him caught off guard. And I would anticipate that Purdue's going to try to do that tonight. Get in there and get a little bit physical with him early. And then outside of that, I mean, if you get him off kilter and then you are corralling Wilkerson, I just don't know how many other offensive options Indiana has.
Get up all up in his business.
That's right. Look at you. You even did like a finger wag there.
You're
now,
welcome, yeah.
The other thing,
Conaway, yeah.
in defense of Darren DeVries in Indiana, he is a good coach, and I think they're going to be just fine long term. At this point, they are in desperate need of a quality win. They don't have one yet. This would go a long way in that if they're going to be a bubble team. And this is a roster that he had to – it's really pretty incredible. Two things of which you got to give credit for. And I know people don't want to hear this. But I led the show by saying this. I'm looking out right now at I-70, and I'm watching cars pass. And they're probably going 45, 50. I can see 10th Street. There's a truck going past right now. It looks pretty close. I can see on one of the side roads here, I'm looking out. I can't see Penn from here. I don't even know what this little side street is, but.
The one over here is 10th Street, right?
No, 10th is going this way. The one that's coming towards you. That's just like an alleyway. But it is, when you consider 36 hours ago, we had a foot of snow that fell out of the sky. A foot. I'm old enough to remember when a foot of snow literally had, I mean, as I say, everybody wants to sit here and complain and moan about the lack of the clearing of roads, but those same people flocked to the grocery stores on Saturday evening and loaded up with a week's worth of groceries. Well, if you thought the roads were supposed to be cleared a day later, then why did you go out and buy a week's worth of groceries? Got to be consistent in your emotion here. I think all told, and listen, there are plenty of things to complain about in terms of the way things are run or lack thereof in this town. Don't get me wrong. And many of which I'll address once I announce officially my mayoral campaign. But so there are plenty of things to be upset about. I get it. But the clearing of roads in this particular snowstorm, I don't think should be one of them. The main roads, you can, at the very least, they are passably able to get through. And considering that they had a foot of snowdrop a day ago, that's pretty impressive. And the same thing, if I'm giving credit and passing it out where due, Darren DeVries, I think you have to look at and say, yes, their roster may not be as complete as you would like, but you also have to consider the timetable in which he had to put it together. And if you consider that, it's pretty commendable. But they don't have a lot of scores outside of those two, and I do think that it is fairly easy to get them out of offensive rhythm. And that's an area that Purdue can exploit tonight. Tyrese Halliburton talked about his journey back. Just came out this morning, his comments. We'll play them for you next. Hey there, Jake Query for Game Day Men's Health. You know, we're talking about breaking down the game, for example. What do you want what team you're a fan of? What do you want? You want to make sure they have a clear game plan with any game they go into. And that's exactly what Game Day Men's Health and their clinics can do for you in terms of a game plan of guys getting you back in the game, getting that energy back, helping out with that belly fat, helping you with recovery in your workouts, all of it. The peptide therapy and the testosterone therapy of Game Day Men's Health and their clinics are designed for exactly that. With clinics in the Indy metro area in Avon, Carmel, Fishers, and Greenwood. Game Day Men's Health, I've been up there. I went through up in Carmel. I saw their clinic. I saw how efficient they are, in and out in an hour. And in addition to that, precise in making sure that they're coming up with a therapy that is best for you. Whether you're simply wanting to get that extra energy that's avoiding that 3 o'clock nap, that's what the testosterone therapy, for example, can do. Or the peptide therapies. A lot of research about this in terms of different areas in which peptide, great for recovery, energy, help out with weight loss. They also have weight loss injections that you can do at Game Day Men's Health as well. If you're wanting to simply be the better you, if you're wanting a game plan, Game Day Men's Health and their clinics are there for you. Find out a consultation time. Go on, look and see at the different products they have and find the roadmap that is best for you. GameDayMen'sHealth.com. That's GameDayMen'sHealth.com.
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Stephen Holder coming up about 15 minutes from now. You know, one conversation I had with a Pacers executive probably 2 years ago. I don't remember the exact time frame. I think it was when Tyrese Halliburton was given his max contract extension with Indiana after they had traded for him. And I talked to one member of the Pacers front office, and we were discussing the fact, having nothing to do with Tyrese Halliburton, but because max contracts were in the conversation, I was bringing up one of those fascinating dynamics of sport that I have noticed over the years, where when you sign a player to a big-time deal, how often does that player play the lifetime of that deal with the team that he signed it with, where it is beneficial for both all the way through? Because more often than not, I shouldn't say more often, but seemingly it feels like when a player gets a big-time deal like that, you see plenty of them that then by year 4 of a 5-year deal or year 3 of a 5-year deal, whatever it may be, that player suddenly becomes trade bait because the productivity is just not matching what the player at that point is getting paid. Michael Pittman Jr. comes to mind. Great player, good guy, has played hurt, been truly a guy that's put his body out there. And he merited and was worth what it was the Colts gave him at that time. But now that you look at it and you're going, okay, based on the production, the emergence of Alec Pierce, et cetera, is his contract still worth what we're getting in productivity? Or is that something that we may have to cut, reassess, whatever, trade, et cetera, restructure? And in the NBA, you see a lot of players that get a big-time deal, and you're like, oh, wow. And then all of a sudden, you look at the last 2 years of said deal, and they're with like 4 different teams because they just it becomes a contract piece that teams are going just getting the contract for cap space, futuristic, et cetera.
Malcolm Brogdon.
Prime example. He's a perfect player for this example, right? And so we were discussing that about Halliburton, and this Pacers executive said to me, and they weren't disagreeing with the sentiment, and they said, now, this case with Tyrese Halliburton, they're like, you just wait. I said, what do you mean? They said, there's just something about him. He has this it factor where he lifts everyone in the room. Not just his style of play lifts his teammates, but he has a persona and an energy and an enthusiasm and a personality and an optimism and a radiance that lifts everyone in the room.
I think they call that aura now.
Yes. He has an aura, undoubtedly. And someday it truly will sink into me the level of fortune that we had to be able to watch. It really is remarkable that last year, not only the shot he hit against Milwaukee in the regular season, but then to realize that the Pacers stole the opening round game of 3 different opponents. 4. All 4, right? Did he have a rabbit out of the hat game against Milwaukee, right?
He had one where he hit the float over Patrick Beverley. That was before the finals run.
Okay. Well, then he had, obviously, the 4-point play against Milwaukee, right?
Yes. That was a regular season game.
Cleveland, though, he had a rabbit out of a hat against Cleveland, right?
He had one for sure against New York.
And then, obviously, he hit the game winner in Game 1 against Oklahoma City. I mean,
yes.
One of the most remarkable runs ever. The point that I'm making here, long-winded, is simply this. The one thing that would be understandable, so much of recovery from injury in athletics is mental and emotional and psychological. And you would understand completely if Tyrese Halliburton and everything that went into that and everything that was denied him causes him internally to have doubt, to have anger, to lose some of that aura. And I think it's something probably that he battles against, of not getting simply bitter. But earlier today he did, or I shouldn't say earlier today is when it was released. Eddie, inform me for what exactly it is that the podcast that he was on.
It's Mind the Game with Steve Nash and LeBron James.
Okay. And he was asked about the process, the learning, everything that goes into this time away from being on the floor with his teammates. Here's Tyrese Halliburton.
Process has sucked, man. Like, there's been good days, bad days. There's days where I sit there and I just keep asking, like, why is this happening to me? It's hard for me to understand in this moment, but I understand that it's allowing me to grow in different ways, to grow in my faith, to grow in all these different ways that have been good for me. I think seeing the game of basketball, I'm watching it in a different light. Like, I think it's different when you're getting ready to play like a team like Boston, for example, and they're like, okay, we got Peyton Pritchard. I'm like, okay, he's nice, but all I'm focused on is how can I get a stop. I'm not thinking about how he making his reads and stuff. And I was watching him the other day, and just the way that he gets to guys' bodies at the rim, that's really something that I'm trying to focus on through my rehab, through my time to get back, is just being more physical. Peyton's one of the guys I watch. I see the way he can get to a guy's chest at the rim. I think AR is like the perfect example, the way that he is so physical and can get to the free throw line. I remember when we were at the World Cup together, I used to always be like, bruh, I don't understand how you shoot all these free throws. Like, I'm a point guard. I play 40 minutes a game. I play way more than you. I can't even touch the free throw line. He's like, Tyrese, I don't think you're doing a good job of getting the guys' bodies. Like, he was real honest with me, and I didn't understand at the time, but as I've watched you guys play more, watched him play more, I'm seeing the way that he just does such a great job of getting the chest, tangling arms, like making such all these like perfect reads to get to the free throw line is just something that I'm really trying to focus on adding through rehab and just as I watch the game.
Okay, AR that he's referencing there is Austin Reeves, and the voice that you heard affirming much of what he is saying, LeBron James. But at the outset of that, and that's the thing that makes, I believe, Tyrese Halliburton special and unique. The recognition that, yes, this has been a difficult process. But at the same time, the understanding of the ability to learn from it. And I think there are a lot of players, a lot of people that would sit back with a woe is me attitude or screw the world attitude. I think he's just wired differently. I may be wrong. I watch him pretty closely during the point of the timeouts and the interactions he has with his teammates at games still right now. And he is always encouraging and always seemingly in a good mood. Now, I am not naive to believe that that means that deep down he doesn't have areas where he struggles. But the recognition of finding the positives or the things you can take away from a learning standpoint there, one would hope that that is good news and that means that you're going to see an improved version of him when he does return.
What'd you make of his decision? I don't know if it was, I'm assuming this is his, but instead of staying with the team through the 5-game road trip, he flies back home after Boston. And it's with with everything that I know, the anticipation was that Tyrese was going to rejoin the team in Atlanta instead of going out to Oklahoma City. But because of the weather, he wasn't able to rejoin the team yesterday down in Georgia. So he missed the final 2 games of the road trip. But your thoughts on Tyrese and the emotions and not wanting to go back to Oklahoma City just yet?
Totally understand that.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that surprised me, and I don't know if this was his decision. There's probably no correct answer in this. But when I watched Starting 5 on Netflix, and one of the things about that show to me was I wanted to see more of the in-game stuff, and they just kind of glossed over quickly like the highlights of each game. But I watched it when in Game 7 and when he got hurt, and it certainly was pretty fascinating to see the video of inside the locker room and what he was doing and his reaction of watching the game. But I was surprised to learn in that documentary that Tyrese Halliburton did not speak to his teammates at halftime. I don't mean that he that came off the wrong way. I was surprised to learn that he did not give like some sort of a speech, or they did not ask him to do so. But at the same time, I also understand he was in a separate room, and probably there was the thought process of like, look, the guys are ahead at the half. They got one more half to play. They got to focus. Rick Carlisle's got to go over a few things. But it did surprise. He says in it that his one regret, is that he did not go in and give like a win one for the Gipper speech. I don't know that it would have made a difference. But I do understand that would be because I'll tell you what, I mean, this is apples and oranges times 10,000. But I was watching that show starting 5. I was sitting there watching it with Shannon, and she was there at Game 7. And it was difficult for her not difficult for her to watch it, but when she saw that, she was just like, yeah, just like, and she was reliving like the emotion she felt in being there in that moment. And then when we were watching the game the other night, Friday night in Oklahoma City, she was saying, she's like, man, that arena, like it brought back for her right there, not a PTSD per se, but it immediately put her back in that moment of that evening. So I can only imagine for him, I kind of get it why he wouldn't want to go back. And probably he wants to make sure that his first return back is when he can go through the process. That will be a significant moment, I can tell you, in coming back from something that physically ails you. You have moments of symbolism. You have places of symbolism and benchmarks in your mind. And that will be a big one for him. And I'd assume that he wants to return to it when he can go out and say, okay, I completed a game on that floor. Stephen Holder joins us next. Hey there, Jake Quarry for Chicago's Pizza, 18 Central Indiana locations and 21 statewide for Chicago's Pizza. New, by the way, in Martinsville. Chicago's Pizza, I love them. I love it because not only do you have the lunch buffet, which you can get every day from 11 until 1:30 at any location, that includes their traditional pizza, their deep dish pizza, their salad bar with all the fixings, a soft drink, and, of course, the dessert pizza, the fresh-made breadsticks, all that for $13, which is an incredible bargain. Every day from 11 until 1:30 at Chicago's Pizza. But don't forget, family pizza night, family meal deal. $25, just $25 for 2 medium, 1-topping pizzas and a fresh order of breadsticks that are made right there, fresh, hand-rolled, just like the dough is every single day inside Chicago's Pizza. When you talk pizza, you want the very best ingredients, you want fresh, and you want people that not only care about pizza, but the community as well. That's everything you get with Chicago's Pizza. I love them. I'm a huge fan, not just the pizza, but the people. A story in every slice at Chicago's Pizza. Find a location near you, chicagospizza.com.
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Now, I could be wrong in this. I was wrong once in 1978, and that happened again about 3 years ago. So I'm free to admit there are times where I'm wrong. So I could be wrong in this. Eddie Garrison can perhaps correct me. But I believe they all run together to me after a while. But Stephen Holder of ESPN.com set to join us in just a minute. And I believe, and you folks can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think we've talked to Stephen since the Indiana-Miami National Championship game. I could be wrong in that. But as we get set for the Super Bowl, there's plenty to talk about with Stephen, including news in the NFL today. Joe Brady is the new head football coach of the Buffalo Bills. He is promoted from offensive coordinator. Interesting move, because you would think that if the Bills are going to make that kind of a change at head coach, that means that they needed an altogether different direction. But I guess they would know better than most. Eddie, is this the first time we've talked to Steven since the national title game?
It is indeed, Jake. Okay. Remember, we did the all-caller Tuesday show.
That's right.
In celebration.
That's right. So Steven joins us now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Steven, I saw before the national championship game, you took a picture with your former colleague, Zach Kiefer, who, of course, was there rooting for Indiana. You were rooting for Miami, understandably. You grew up there. It's your alma mater. Your overall thoughts before we get to the NFL, just on that game in general, not necessarily the X's and O's of the game, because we know all that, but just the atmosphere, the Indiana fans, etc.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to hold it against Zach. I will still talk to him. We're still friends. So I'm not that petty. That's the first thing. You know what? It was pretty impressive. I can't lie. Indiana showed up. Miami fans made a lot of money, so there's that. I'm not mad at them for that, but it would have been nice to have more of us in the building. Look, I do think it was I mean, some people were saying 50-50. I thought it was a little bit more lopsided to Indiana. I'll give Indiana that, man. You know, they knew this was historic. Indiana fans knew this was historic and treated it like that. The other reality is that, like, Miami fans, it's like, I'm getting off the subject, and this is not what you asked me, but I just feel the need to say this. Miami fans are a little misunderstood, right? Like, it's certainly a big. There's certainly a lot of fans locally that root for Miami, but they also don't have the same emotional ties because we're a small private school, right? We don't have the huge alumni base, so people aren't necessarily as invested. But like they definitely grew up Canes fans, right? If you were here in the in the 90s and 2000s, 80s, 90s, or 2000s. But I do think it's a little different. Like right when Indiana, like someone in your family probably went to IU if you grew up in Indiana. You know what I mean? Like you have just many more ties. It's just different. The big state school that is 100 and something years old. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but don't have the history that Miami has. So it's just a complicated history. And then the other thing is that Miami is basically half transplants. Like, no one's from here. It's just the reality. So, we got a bunch of New Yorkers and, people from everywhere else that wanted to get out of the snow, and then they moved here, and they're like, oh, they play football here? That's interesting. So, anyway, but awesome event. Everybody got along. I think both schools' fans understood, like, the gravity of them being there and how special it was. And so, win or lose, everybody was going to walk away from that feeling like, damn, we did something big this year.
So were the IU fans pretty cool to the Miami fans and vice versa? Yeah,
I think so. I think everybody got along great. And it's weird for me too, right? Because I saw so many Indiana people I knew, like tons, at the game, and all my Miami people looking at me like, how do you know all these people? I'm like, where do I live, man? It's like, so it was a little bit odd that like I knew as many Indiana fans at the game as I did Miami fans, almost, these people that I knew personally, right? So that was weird. My experience was a little odd for that reason. But I thought everybody got along great. You know, I was sitting in a section that was a little more heavily slanted to the Miami section, you know, the way the tickets were divvied up. Our tickets were definitely in the Miami section, if you will. But we were toward the fringe of that area, and there were tons of Indiana fans mixed in where I was sitting, and there was no animosity whatsoever. I stayed. I watched the celebration after the game. Like, it was cool. You know what I mean? Like, I thought everybody got along well. There wasn't a lot of arrogance, I don't feel like, on either side. If there's any arrogance, I'm not going to lie, it's going to be Miami fans, right? They're akin to, some of us at least, not me, but some are akin to like Raiders fans, I would say.
Oh, okay.
But so like people have learned to like, you know, shut the hell up and not talk too much trash.
1820, by the way, the first year of Indiana University. Stephen Holder, my guest, ESPN.com, where you can read his work. Before we get to talking about the Colts and the Super Bowl, Stephen, curious of this. You went to the game, if I'm not mistaken, with a couple of college buddies. Typically when that happens, there's always one guy that you find out like doesn't get a lot of hall passes at home during the regular year, and thus as a result just goes absolutely hog wild, and before you know it is wearing like lampshades on his head. Any of that?
No, but I do have a degenerate gambler in the group.
Okay.
It was like, yeah, I'm just gonna like hang out at the casino for a little bit, and then next thing you know, it's like I was there till 5 a.m. I'm like, dude, you got a problem, man. Like, you know, it's okay. Like, we're friends. So you know, you learn more about people as you spend more.
That's beautiful. All right. Okay, I talked about this yesterday. I want your thought on it. When you look at Seattle and you look at New England, which, if either, of those two teams offers optimism for the way the Colts are being built, and which one is an indictment on the Colts?
Okay, so I spaced for a little bit. You said out of the Patriots and Seahawks.
Correct. Of the two in the Super Bowl, is there one that offers glimpse for the Colts of optimism, and is there one that you say, see, this is where the Colts erred, they should have done it this way?
You know, it's funny because I think both of those teams, I don't know that there's a lot that I take away from them that I can apply to the Colts, unfortunately. But I will say this. I think the Seahawks are what the Colts hoped to be this year. And now they were never going to be that, right? Because they don't have like Jackson Smith and Jigba or, you know, someone like that necessarily, like a completely dominant receiver. Maybe they're missing some pieces like that. Defensively, I don't know if their talent was ever going to be on that level. But I think, in theory, the Colts were like, look, if we get – because remember, they had Geno Smith, right? And they were like, we got to upgrade. The Colts had Anthony Richardson, right? And they were like, we got to upgrade. So there's the parallel, I think. And both those teams did upgrade at quarterback for sure. But one guy stayed healthy and was able to see it through. The other guy didn't. So now we're back in this state where we're like, all right, he was an upgrade, but like, you know, what's the ceiling with Daniel Jones? We still don't know, right? Because he didn't get to see it through. So we don't know what that ceiling is. Now the Seahawks have found what Sam Darnold's ceiling is. So, and then there's also the parallel of both those quarterbacks being guys who were trying to, you know, find their way after failing in a previous situation, obviously. So that is obvious. But I do think, I would say Seattle is probably more of the test case for the Colts. The question, as I said, though, is do they have enough? Can they compete outside of quarterback? Do they have enough? And I don't know that they do. That's a question that is still TBD. But the other thing there is it's not just quarterback. Like dominant defense can take you a long way. There was a period this season where Sam Darnold hit a rough patch, and their offense in general hit a rough patch just before they played the Colts. And go back and look at the results. I believe they went 2 games without scoring an offensive touchdown, if I'm not mistaken. So what carried them was their defense through that. They were able to survive it. And then their offense found its way here in the playoffs, and look at them now, right? So ultimately, that defense is going to have to carry you at some point, no matter how good your offense is. And so that's another takeaway from the Seahawks there.
You know, Darnold, I remember you saying, Stephen Holder, my guest, Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Stephen, I remember you saying before the national championship game when we were talking about Miami and Indiana, and you said Carson Beck is prone to turnovers or mistakes.
Yeah.
And we saw, that Indiana got it at the end when it mattered most. Sam Darnold, to me, is a good story. I think most people would agree with that. This is a guy that, by all accounts, seems likable. He was in a couple of pretty bad situations. I thought last year, against Minnesota, played really well, or for Minnesota, played really well. But then at the end of the year, kind of reverted back, and we saw that from Daniel Jones, right? Started to slide a little bit into what the Giants had let go. Is there the possibility that, and I want Seattle to win the game, open disclaimer, but I'm worried that that midnight is going to strike and he's going to have 2 turnovers in him in the Super Bowl. Am I too paranoid?
No, I think there's a track record there. We can't ignore it. But I would say this. I was waiting for him to fall apart in the playoffs too. Okay, just full disclosure. Not like rooting for it, but just anticipating it. You know what I'm saying? Based upon what happened last year. I do think, though, that now there is a body of work from Sam Darnold over 2 years. Okay, we maybe don't have this with Daniel Jones. What we have with Daniel Jones is like 10 games. But with Sam Darnold now, if you exclude that wild card game last year, you have a body of work over 2 years that's pretty good. That's a long time, right? And I'm not saying there haven't been any bumps in the road in there. There's been a couple, doozies, I'm sure. But I think that's meaningful. 2 years of it. So they have a lot more to judge him based upon. The Seahawks have a lot more to judge Darnold based upon than the Colts do. Now, and your question wasn't about the Colts, but I'm just taking it full circle here. They have a lot more to judge Sam Darnold on than the Colts do Daniel Jones, which is kind of interesting. So I'm going to give him a little benefit of the doubt here. I think I am.
Okay, early glance at it. Advantage Super Bowl goes to who?
I think Seattle's the more complete team. They've got a more experienced quarterback. Now, granted, we just talked about, will he be that guy when the time comes, and we'll see. But I do think certainly he's a more experienced quarterback. Drake May is a really fine player. I really like Drake May. I liked him, frankly, when the Colts played at New England last year. I walked away from that game. Now, the Patriots were awful, but I walked away from that game saying, you know what? This guy, he's a guy. I think this kid's going to be a guy. And so anyway, so I like him, and I like his future. He's like 23, 24, so he's going to be fine. But I think right now, I think the Seahawks I give them a slight edge as the more complete team, and I think that's what's going to carry them. I like where's the weakness in their team? There aren't a lot. They're even good on like special teams, So I think in all 3 phases, I think that team is superior.
Neither of these teams a year ago did we think they would be in the Super Bowl today. This is not Buffalo or Kansas City or San Francisco or the Rams that have knocked on the door or had success of late. Does that give optimism for the Colts?
A little bit. I think that you also have to look at, for particularly the Patriots. I think, would the Patriots be in the Super Bowl if Lamar Jackson had gotten his act together this year? If the Chiefs had done a better job in the offseason and Patrick Mahomes not gotten hurt? If Joe Burrow, per usual, hadn't gotten hurt? I don't know, right? I think that they struck gold at the right time. They got their act together at the right time when the AFC was as wide open as we have seen it in however long. Many years, I think. Certainly as wide open as it's ever been in the Mahomes era. To not have to face Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs is a win, period. So I do think for the Patriots, I think they're going to be around for a while. I'm not saying they won't. And I love Mike Vrabel. That guy, he can coach his ass off. There's no question about it. But all I'm saying is I don't know if that is instructive of what the Colts can do like next year when those teams maybe regroup. You know what I'm saying? it's going to be back to potentially at least a powerhouse AFC. You would think in theory, right? So that's a question. But I do think there is a lesson to take away there, which is, if you get the quarterback right and you assemble your roster in the right way. The Patriots also were aggressive in free agency. That's got to be a part of it for the Colts. They're aggressive in free agency. You can make a quick road back. The Seahawks, I think, a little slightly different deal, but certainly coaching has been a big part of it. Defense. I mean, that team's built on defense, and then offensively, just an unbelievable playmaker in JSN and the right quarterback at the right time. It's the Colts have some of that. So I don't think they're that far away, but I also am not predicting that it's going to be this instant turnaround because it's hard. You can't skip any of those steps. You got to hit all of them, right? And the Colts they skipped some. You got to rush the quarterback, all these different things, right? So, but I do not think that they're in some barren wilderness. I don't believe that, but I'm not saying they're knocking on the door either.
Stephen, I want you to, we need a sounder of mood music. Like when I tell people I want them to close their eyes and, almost like meditative music, because I'm going to ask Stephen to do a little meditative exercise here, right? Stephen, you're a pretty easygoing guy, but I want you to pretend you're in the salt cave. You got some aroma candles going, and you're just listening to you're just taking yourself somewhere else, okay? Calgon, take me away here. Okay, and in this moment,
on the couch here with the shrimp. So go ahead.
So in this moment, you are sitting there and you are getting ready to enjoy the opening day of. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you. You're enjoying opening day of Colts training camp at Grand Park. It's a beautiful day in Westfield. And you're sitting there and you've got out your laptop and you're watching over and you're thinking about the privilege you have of being the beat writer of the Indianapolis Colts for ESPN.com. And as you're looking over and feeling your fortune and relaxing in this, you realize that you have the pleasure right then to watch, as of opening day of training camp, the number one quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts in that moment throwing to his top three receivers in drills. The four players that you are envisioning in this therapeutic exercise are what four players?
Ooh. Well, this is a trick question, I think, because it's the first day of training camp, and so the question becomes, is Daniel Jones ready to play? And I don't know that we know that.
This is part of why we have the therapeutic music, so that you can find yourself in the moment to answer exactly that.
Find your inner zen.
That's right. You see the way that you see the way that Jake was where he's going with this here, right?
That's right. So, short aside, I did this deal where in the Dominican Republic last time I was there, we went to the spa and got a massage.
Really?
This is definitely the same song they play. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, I would say that Daniel Jones starts on the PUP list.
Okay.
So he is not on the field. This is my prediction. And I predict you are watching Riley Leonard throw to, I think Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, and Josh Downs.
Okay.
I think they restructure Pittman, bring him back, and they keep their receivers together and pay Alec Pierce a lot of money.
Okay. And yes,
am I confident about it? Somewhat.
Now,
but that's my guess.
Now,
in January.
Here's the thing, Eddie. The music again, please, if you could. We're playing this music because you are conducting an interview with Anthony Richardson, who's on a massage table getting ready for his triumphant return to the National Football League, and he is getting a massage because, as we know, his body, while impressive, is one that is rather fragile, and he's getting ready to go out for training camp for his opportunity to stake his claim as an extended lifetime in the National Football League as a quarterback. It is training camp, and you're getting ready to talk to him, and you're inside of a spa with Anthony Richardson. You walk out and you get in your car. You are in what state? Where are you?
First of all, this is getting very weird. I don't know that.
I didn't say Deshaun Watson. I'm just saying. So you're talking to Anthony Richardson on the eve of his day of training camp. You are in what state?
I am in. This is good. Give me a second. Processing. Arizona.
Okay.
They're going to bring in multiple quarterbacks, I feel.
I got a lot of spas in Arizona too, right?
That makes sense. See? There you go.
Yeah,
so hey, one quick aside. I actually did an interview once with Dwayne Wade sitting on the massage table pregame, and he's getting getting one of those like I guess the physical therapist or something giving him a massage, and he fell asleep in the middle of the interview. That's a true story. That's where they got it.
That happens to 60% of the people I talk to on the radio, Steven, so I can completely relate, right? Totally understandable.
Listen, when you talk about quality journalism, that's what I'm talking about, okay?
So the very first big-time interview that I got to do, I've mentioned this before on the air, but Tony Gwynn was with the Padres, and he spent his off seasons in Indianapolis. I might have even told you this story, Steven. And when I was like 25,
is a great story.
Yeah, I got a credential to go cover a Padres game, and I wanted to do a thing on the fact Tony Gwynn lived here. And 2 hours before the game starts, as green and as naive as it gets, I walked right back into the clubhouse, and Tony Gwynn's laying on a training table getting stretched, and I walked right up. Hey, Tony, it's Jake Query from Indianapolis. Can I interview you? And the trainer looks at me like, what in the world? Who let you in here? I was like Kramer trying to get Paul O'Neill to hit 2 dingers for a kid in the hospital. And Tony Gwynn looks at me and looks at him and goes, "Nah, it's cool, man. It's cool." And he's like, "Yeah, meet me in my locker." And he could not have been a nicer, more down-to-earth guy. I think I told you that story at a Pacer game, but he was awesome.
Yeah,
absolutely
that's
awesome.
Great. Yeah, I could do this all day. I won't because you have actual commercials. But I covered Yankee spring training one time in Tampa, and I didn't know there was like a pecking order to like who could ask the first question like Jeter. And so I just went in there and like everybody's just standing around. I'm like, well, I got a question. I really need an answer for this. I got to write this freaking story they gave me. I got to ask. Well, I mean, if you guys aren't going to ask a question, I'll ask a question. And I got glares like that New York media. They were going to assault me. It was like, it's like a thing. You got to like do the whole banter and all that. And I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know the rules. So I shut up the rest of the entire day. I didn't say one word.
Of your early days as a reporter, give me the 2 players that jump out at you as being the ones that you now look back on and realize they knew you were young, they knew you were inexperienced, but they were understanding and appreciative and were total class acts about it. Tony Gwynn would be one for me. Reggie Miller would be another for me.
I like this. I would say, okay, this happened to me with Anthony Mason one time, okay, which this is a really surprising answer probably. But Anthony Mason, who is one of the scariest human beings I've ever met, all right, I believe he had just gotten traded to the Heat, and I was like one step above intern or something at the Miami Herald, and I was sitting there covering a WNBA game when we had a team back then, and he's sitting courtside. Now he's just gotten traded. No one's talked to him, and he's sitting courtside. So I'm like at halftime, I'm going for it. So I go over there and I grab him at halftime, and I said something really stupid and put my foot in my mouth, and he just looked at me. He's like, "You were doing so well." and his friends sitting next to me, and they laughed their butts off at me. But then he gave me the interview, and we talked, and I was like, "This is cool." And my bosses were thrilled. So anyway, that's the one that comes to mind. And I'm not gonna lie, like it's the part of the job that like you're mortified in the moment, but I mean, I'm gonna tell you something. If you ever run into me at a bar, like you're gonna be there for 3 hours because I have so many stories, man. You know what I'm saying? Like I have so many stories, and I'm fortunate to have them because I've had these interactions. Right. So like, he didn't punch me. I think, and he's passed on now. I think
he is the late great right. Anthony Mason. Yes, he didn't punch me, and I appreciate that. When I was a young buck at Channel 6, and basically they would do me the favor of giving me a microphone and allowing me to go in with the different photographers just to get sound bites, right? And I would ask questions, but I was a behind-the-scenes guy. And one day Ed Sorensen walked in. He goes, what are you still doing here, man? Like, you're afraid to go out and test the waters. You just need to make a resume tape and get it out there. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. So that night, after a Pacer game, I walked up to Reggie Miller. And I look back on this, Steven, and I think to myself, this is so incredibly naive, immature, and unprofessional, right? But I walked up to Reggie Miller and told him what I was doing. I'm putting together a resume tape. I'm trying to start a career. And I said, if I hand you the microphone, can you say, please hire this guy and get him out of Indianapolis because he always asks the hardest questions? And Reggie Miller goes,
my God.
Sure. So he grabs the microphone, looks at the camera, and says, I'm Reggie Miller of the Indiana Pacers. If you're a news director contemplating hiring Jake Query, please do it because you got to get this guy out of the market because he always asks the hardest questions. And then
That's incredible.
Right. So I get the job. I left. I got a job in St. Louis. I left. I come back to Indianapolis. I'm home like at winter break or whatever. It must have been in the summer or something. And I was out and I run into him. And I walk up to thank him for doing it. And as soon as I walk up, he's like, man, it worked, didn't it? It worked. Because I was on Fox Sports Midwest, which carried Pacer games, and he was aware of it. And I always appreciated that. Always thought it was cool. All right, last one before we let you go.
I will add one more. You asked me for two. I'll give you one other one real quick, and it's not sports. The late John McCain, I interviewed him once. And I was a news reporter once upon a time because, I actually have journalism experience and stuff, So anyhow, yeah, I interviewed him the day after the Clinton impeachment hearings ended. The country's in, complete disarray, and I was sent down to this Republican conference at the Doral Country Club in Miami because he was going to be there. And they're like, you got to get John McCain. And I'm terrified. And I got him. I was like 22 years old. I got him, and I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. And he gave me, he answered all of my questions.
But he was great.
He was great. He was absolutely great. And so, anyway, I always appreciate it.
Biggest horse's ass you ever dealt with? And if it's somebody that you currently have to deal with and you don't want to say it for that reason, I understand.
Right. I would say I haven't had a ton of them, believe it or not. But
I have not either, but there's one that jumps out.
Well, there's probably a few, but you know who gave me a hard time? I shouldn't say a hard time, but just he made my job hard was Butch Davis, former University of Miami coach. Well, I wouldn't say he was like a horse's ass necessarily, but dude, you just lied. Dude, you're lying, and we documented that you're lying to us. You know what I mean? It's like, come on, have a little more respect for me than that. Anyway, I would give you a better answer if I thought about it longer, though. I assure you.
Mine is Randy Johnson, but that's probably of no surprise to anybody.
That does not surprise.
Does not make me unique by any stretch of the imagination. All right, no. Stephen, appreciate the time as always. We'll have a little more idea about the Super Bowl next time we talk. Probably we can get into it further then.
All right, sounds good.
All right, Stephen Holder joining us, ESPN.com. Randy Johnson, by the way, he was with the Diamondbacks. I was covering the Cardinals. He was just difficult, intentionally difficult. And he's now a photographer, has a great passion for it. And one cool thing, he has been almost annually at the Grand Prix, the Long Beach Grand Prix for IndyCar. He's got a thirst for cars as well. And I went up to him one time there and was just like, hey, any chance we can grab you real quick, whatever. He was totally rude about it. And he grew up in middle school with former Colt Jack Trudeau, whose brother got in a fight with Randy Johnson. So finally, after the second time of Randy Johnson being completely sour to me, I just said, you know what, for what it's worth, man, I know for a fact that Jack Trudeau's brother actually beat you up when you were in fifth grade. And he looked at me like, what in the world? How in the world do you know that? I got eyes on you, bud. I got eyes on you. Something about the NFL draft that I'm going to mention again on the other side.
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
I brought this up earlier. I'm going to bring it up again. By the way, Eddie, if you could, back that up and play that chorus again. This is one of those lyric things. Okay. Right here, he what's the rain. You ready? Here you go. What is it?
I bless the rains down in Africa.
For my entire life, I thought it was I miss the rains down in Africa. And it is, in fact, I bless the rains.
Okay.
You are correct. When my brain becomes convinced of something like I miss the rains down in Africa, one of my weaknesses is that it's difficult for me to get off of
fixation.
Yes, the fixation. But I feel vindicated. I mentioned this earlier. Yesterday, the story came out, and I'm all for it, that Indianapolis is a potential futuristic site of the NFL draft. That would make sense. I would imagine that at some point.
Futuristic? Whoa.
Or future, sorry. Yeah, well, yeah, the Jetsons, like, brrr, that's what it's going to sound like when they bring up the picks. Future site, sorry. And you would imagine that eventually each market will get the draft at some point. And I don't know whether or not it will continue to be the huge event that it's been it does feel to me like that started to taper a little bit, but I digress. The NFL, and it would be fabulous. I love Indianapolis. I champion for Indianapolis every opportunity I can. If I meet someone from out of town, I got a text the other day from some guy during the 500. It was like, oh my gosh, like you probably don't remember this, but I sat next to you on an airplane once, and my wife and I were in Indy, and so you met us over and you took us around the Speedway. And I'm like, I do remember that, a guy from California. And he's like, and now I'm at the race with my friends. That we had to come back. Like I love selling Indianapolis, and we'll do it any opportunity I get. So of course, I think it'd be awesome if Indianapolis can host the NFL draft. I would do cartwheels for that. But the NFL is the 800-pound gorilla. It is the most dominant aspect of the American entertainment culture. The NFL is bigger than Netflix, Prime, Hulu, Paramount, and all three networks combined. It's massive. We're about to see that coming up when the Super Bowl plays, and people will again be talking about how Monday should be a national holiday where people aren't even expected to go to work because everyone's watching the Super Bowl. So for that reason, I've never understood the NFL's desire and insistence on embellishing its popularity. And one of the areas under which I have always had issue is their preposterous claim of attendance figures of the NFL draft. And when I pointed that out, virtually everyone's like, Query, you're a hater. You have no idea what you're talking about. There were absolutely 1 million people there. I'm like, people don't realize how many people, 1 million people, what that looks like. So when they said there were, and I think ultimately they said either 1 or 2 million people were at the NFL draft in Nashville, Tennessee, which is an absurd number. That's literally the population of Nashville, Tennessee. I remember the late Jim Irsay, rest his soul, on the opening night of the NFL draft in Detroit, sending a tweet on round one that said, 750,000 people have flocked to the NFL draft in Detroit. 750,000 people. There haven't been 750,000 people in Detroit since literally Kiss was singing about them. Okay? I just don't understand the reason, number one, to embellish that number, and number two, the immediate absorption by the fan base of taking that as fact. So, with this potential that Indianapolis could host the NFL draft, which would be awesome, and I'm here for it, pack the new hotel that looks like it's been wrapped in a Nordstrom gift box, pack the JW Marriott, pack every hotel that we have here, all of it. Bring it in. Pack the restaurants. Bring them back. All of it. But the location possibilities that I heard, Military Park, White River State Park, the south lot of Lucas Oil Stadium. Okay. Here's what's interesting to me. I have no idea the dynamics and the business partnerships that would have to go into play between the NFL and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But the Indianapolis Motor Speedway has been used for the city's sports stage. It was the opening host of the Pan American Games in 1987. It has had events take place there. The Rolling Stones played there. It's had different things go on. And there are other events now besides racing that are, BMW has testing stuff that takes place there, or dealers that can go out and take laps, etc. But in terms of permanent seat fixtures, there are roughly 260,000 of them at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway with, we know factually, the ability to house another 75 to 90,000 people in the infield. So if you have an event that you've told the entire world 350,000 people show up for the opening announcement of the NFL draft, what better place to do it than the Indianapolis Motor Speedway? Unless you're actually worried because the sheer magnitude and size of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway offer an immediate eye test as to whether or not that's truly the number of people you get. So could it be that the NFL is saying, we'll do it in Indianapolis, but we're not going to do it at the most famous sports venue in town? Because if we don't pack it filled to the brim, then everybody's going to know that forever our numbers have been completely bunk, which are still an impressive number. If they came out and said 100,000 people showed up at the NFL draft in Green Bay, I'd go, that's awesome. And it might be that number. I think it's more like 75,000 personally. But either way, that's still an amazingly impressive number. But think about when you go to the Indianapolis 500. And yes, I know I obsess over this. But think about when you go to the Indianapolis 500. Think about the traffic going in and out, the log jam of people, the aerial shots of every neighborhood from 10th Street to 30th Street, from 465 to White River Parkway, filled to the brim with cars and passengers and people walking and hitchhikers and campers, all of it. And that equates to 300,000 people, never making 400,000. And you're here to tell me that that's one half of 2/3 the audience that was there in Nashville for the NFL draft? Okay, that's my Eddie Murphy, Axel Foley face. Sure. So it would seem to me that the Indianapolis Motor Speedway would be the natural place. Because if truly that's the number, what better place to do it? Unless it would illuminate the fact that that number we've been told all along is a fallacy. J&B's here. I saw him walking around. We'll find out what he's got cooking for his big program. We'll do it as part of the crossover brought to you by the good guys at Love Heating and Air. Love-HVAC.com is the website. 317-353-2141 is the telephone number.
Barry and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Indiana, Purdue tonight, 9 o'clock tip down at Simon Scott Assembly Hall.
8 o'clock pregame coverage on 93 WIBC.
If you are driving down, be careful. Road conditions, I have been told that there, again, was a major backup on 69 northbound around 96th Street, the numerically dyslexic intersection.
Well, just in general, Jake, be careful if you're driving, not just
Correct.
in relation to getting down to Bloomington.
70 West was closed earlier. It is now reopened due to slick conditions. 465, I believe it was 465 southbound earlier. Let me
Westbound, I know that
westbound. Okay. 465 westbound earlier.
Wait, no.
Well, that would be on the north side, right? Well, 465 west could also be on the south side.
Yeah.
Let me see here which one it was. But 465 westbound to 65 south down on the south side also was closed due to slick conditions. So want to make sure that everybody is aware of that. Please be careful if you are out and about. Eddie, I asked this question the other day on social media with Indiana and Purdue playing tonight.
Yep.
People are passionate about both fan bases. Tell me the basketball program or two that for whatever reason you've always kind of liked and there's no real reason to understand why. You've just always kind of liked them.
It's a good question. I feel like that's Gonzaga for a lot of people.
Okay, that's probably right.
I don't know why. UConn always, the Huskies, I don't know why.
Yeah, you just always liked them, right?
Yeah. What about you?
I don't know why, but when I take that back. Maybe I do know why. I don't remember which came first, my like for the team, and then I got a pencil of it, or I got the pencil because I liked whichever it is, or I began liking the team because I had a pencil, or I got the pencil because I liked the team. But Arkansas, I don't know why. I've always liked the Arkansas Razorbacks. Pig suey. I've always liked the Arkansas Razorbacks. Part of that also is because back in the day, Nolan Richardson's 40 Minutes of Hell, but I still remember their big three: Lee Mayberry, Todd Day, Oliver Miller. And I remember one of the great lines. Todd Day was just fun to watch. And Arkansas was playing Georgia Tech in the 90 Final Four in Denver, and it was towards the end of the half, and Arkansas was running the clock out at the half, and Todd Day was dribbling the ball basically on the logo, and Billy Packer said, Todd Day's within his range. And I just remember thinking, that's right. That dude could shoot from anywhere and would. And then, of course, they had, Corliss Williamson, Scotty Thurman. It's a good team. But I always kind of liked Arkansas. I like St. Mary's now because of their coach.
Friend of the show.
Friend of the show, that's right.
Randy Bennett.
And then outside of that, I always thought Georgia was kind of cool, even before Tom Crean was there.
Georgia.
I always thought Georgia was kind of cool. And, Vern Fleming and Dominique Wilkins, and it was always a football school, but when I was in high school, and clearly it was a clerical error, the two schools that sent me recruiting letters for basketball, Georgia and Colorado. I mean, I was just on some sort of a mailing list, but, I realize that now. But I went out and bought a Georgia basketball hat as a result. And it's completely fallen apart. Still have it, though. But tonight will be good. Indiana, Purdue, and I think Indiana's got a shot here because I think they're going to be able to get some open threes, and if they're able to knock those down, that could challenge things. But Purdue's going to try to take advantage of their size, their athleticism inside. That will be a storyline to watch. Now, JMV is wearing the shirt of the team I adopted. I've got a baseball hat that matches his shirt today. I'm a big fan of the Buffalo Sabres.
Do you know Matt Godbout? Used to work for the Colts.
Do not.
Sales guy. He now is in front office sales for the Sabres.
Oh, is he really?
Sent me the motherload of Sabres gear. So I'm like Dominic Hasek walking around here.
So my buddies, Mike Byron, Scott McConnell, and I decided we needed to adopt a hockey team and send text messages in support, and then we're all going to go to Buffalo to watch a game. So we each bought a Sabres hat, and they were struggling, and then they fired their GM, and now they've actually turned things around a little bit.
Well, my son Blake is a big fan of the Montreal Canadiens. So we're going to go when they play in Buffalo, according to him. But we've got what is it, Ice? Whatever the package is, we watch.
Right.
I got everything.
Well, the Sabres are on Hulu a lot.
Center Ice.
Yeah.
Center
Now,
Ice.
hockey to me is interesting though, John, because it's a little intimidating because I assume that I'm not understanding what's going on, but I think it's probably more simple than.
I like your turtleneck though. I should have worn mine. We'd look like Color Me Bad sitting in here.
This is from Roots Canada, by the way. Speaking of the Montreal Canadiens, this is that like super thin material, but it is a turtleneck.
I believe Color Me Bad. There's going to be a 90s show coming not too far away, and I think Color Me Bad is a part of it.
Really?
Have you ever seen Color Me Bad in concert?
I have not.
Do you remember back
huge.
then when they first came out?
Oh yeah, of course.
They had three dudes, and they all looked like they all kind of looked like somebody that was really big time of that particular moment or era, if you remember.
That's right.
Yeah, they had a guy that looked like George Michael, guy that looked like Terrence Trent D'Arby.
I like Terrence Trent D'Arby.
Guy that looked like Kenny G. And then you had, the lead singing guy that had the turtleneck with the gold on the outside.
Okay, let me ask you this. Of the same ilk, I'll tell you a band that was massive then. It was huge for like 8 months and then just disappeared. You never heard from them again. What the hell ever happened to CNC Music Factory?
Yeah.
You remember how big they were?
Is Freedom Williams still alive?
I don't know.
Freedom Williams was at the lead. I think that was what was his name? Civilis and Cole was CNC.
Okay.
I think
they were
Cole,
massive.
I think Cole was gone. One of them would be gone. And then Freedom Williams was the lead at rapper.
One of the two of Milli Vanilli's gone too, right? Rob or Fab?
Yeah, I think Fab.
Whatever happened to Terrence Trent D'Arby?
He just faded away. He's the one that was outspoken. When he first hit, he said he was going to be as big as the Beatles.
Okay, do you remember his two big hits?
Mm-hmm. Wishing Well and Sign Your Name.
Sign Your Name, yeah.
There was one more, too. There was one more song that he had that was top 40 worthy, too. He had three. So,
I mean, he was a cool dude, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he was...
Yeah, he said he was going to be as big as the Beatles.
Fine Young Cannibals, by the way.
Yes.
Fine Young Cannibals, another one that was big at that
Roland
time.
Gift.
All right, what's on the big program, John?
We got to get somebody fired up about IU and Purdue. It doesn't seem like anybody gives a crap. Am I right? Am I wrong?
I think there's an element of truth to that. We talked about it a lot earlier, but I think Indiana being so football crazed lately, and then combined with Purdue's lost 2 in a row, but
I don't think anybody cares.
I'm curious of that.
Fan-wise, players care, but fan-wise, I don't think anybody cares. Hey, by the way, see if you agree with me on this. Somebody had mentioned the Brady Bunch to me a little bit earlier today. This whole participation trophy era started with Bobby Brady.
That's right.
Do you remember that?
Yeah,
because he was such a freaking loser, he couldn't win anything. And they couldn't even win the ice cream eating contest.
That's right,
and then
froze.
they half-assed the trophy and made it at home. The kids did and gave it to him. Hey, wait.
They all told him how proud they were. Right?
That was the first participation trophy ever handed out.
Blame it all on Mike Lukenland, right? All right, John's up next. We'll be back with you noon tomorrow.